5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Ahoy, everyone! My name is Bobby Shortle, and I'm here with Nick Rocco Scalia, and we are the Intrepid Filmographers. Every mini-series, we chart a course through the full filmography of an under-discussed genre or journeyman filmmaker. In this expedition, we do our best to try and be explorers, using our years of film knowledge to help guide us, but always being open to discovering new things about the medium we love so much. Today, we start a new journey, this time into the films of Ben Affleck, beginning with his directorial debut, Gone, Baby Gone, and discover if it truly is the things we don't choose that make us who we are. Nick, how you doing today?
I'm so excited to talk about this movie.
This was your choice. This was Nick's choice, right? Ben Affleck?
It was, not because of this movie. Like, I actually forgot how much I like this movie.
But we're starting a new journey, a new filmmaker, and for the first time, we have a guest. Former Talking Movies host, former Adventure cast member, Brian Verderosa. How are you doing?
I'm well, man. How are you?
Good.
Don't forget my journey on the Doctor Who cast train.
Doctor Who cast, Origin, one of the original Talking Comics people.
Yeah.
Well, you've been kind of a silent partner in this show, too. Like, you get mentioned at least once per episode.
Most episodes.
Probably nobody listening to the show knows who you are, but now they do.
True.
It's almost like they do know you because
Yeah.
we've talked about you so much.
Yes. Mostly terrible things.
I'm very happy to be here. This is one of those movies that I did not see for a long time, saw, and then I was the living embodiment of the Jim Gaffigan bit of like, I want to talk about Gone Baby Gone. No, loser.
I would have talked about Gone Baby Gone with you. Where was I?
You were responding to my text saying, I don't know how I missed that thing about Gone Baby Gone. I fucking love that movie. I'm sorry. BTW, how the fuck did I miss your Gone Baby Gone text? It is fucking fantastic. October 20th, 2016.
Brian keeps all the receipts.
I was going to say, yeah, there's a paper trail there. What
We'll be
else do you have
talking-
on me? So much.
We'll be talking, and I'll be like, I probably mentioned this thing more than anybody else you know, and then I'll look at a screenshot.
Actually,
back.
947 times. Can I tell like one quick Brian story that I think is a good way of introducing him to our listeners?
Before you tell one quick Brian story, I'm gonna tell Brian quickly to move your mouth a little farther away from the microphone because you're kind of
Sure.
you're kind of blowing it out a little bit. Okay, cool. All right, Nick, do your thing.
Okay. So Brian is not only a movie expert, but also an expert on all things Smashing Pumpkins. And like randomly one time I was listening to Adore and it's blanking.
Adore, the Smashing Pumpkins album, Adore?
The Smashing Pumpkins album, Adore. Yeah.
You weren't talking to a door, like a front door or something, just having a conversation with an inanimate
Well,
object.
I feel like I walked into a wall because I'm forgetting the name of the song. What's the...
Would you mind if I take over?
Yeah, you...
Brian's
Sorry,
got the transcripts.
I've lost
He's
my
got
way.
the
Yeah,
transcripts.
yeah, he does. So it's fine. You got the evidence. You go ahead and take over.
He texted me. Oh, it didn't give me what I want. Well, I can't find it. I know where it is. But you were asking me the song To Sheila and asking if it was ever performed electric instead of acoustic. And I said,
You said the most Brian thing imaginable.
I said 5/14/98 Hamburg, 1/15/2000 Lisbon. And then I think I said, I've been waiting my whole life for somebody to ask me this.
That sounds about right.
I will tell you, I listened to both of those and they were fantastic. So it was worth it. I'm glad I did. You should have been a private investigator. I think you would have been really good at that. There's a calling that you missed out
Yeah.
on.
Talk about every day when you think I should have done this. Oh yeah, I'm 40. I'll just keep doing the thing I'm doing.
I think one of the things you don't have to regret not being is a private investigator.
That seems like a pretty awesome job. Private
I don't
investigator.
know, Nick. Every
married
single
to Michelle
movie-
Monaghan. I don't know. It seems like a pretty
formerly
good way.
married to Michelle Monaghan, every movie or TV show or book about a private investigator ends in them having a horrible life that is broken. They're like an alcoholic. They
True.
live in like their office. You know.
There's worse things you could be. Forget it, Bobby. It's Chinatown.
Okay, yeah, a great example of a movie where the private investigator has a great life at the end of the film. Yeah, so we're here to talk about Gone Baby Gone and the man himself, Ben Affleck. I think when we were talking about the series, Nick brought it up to me, the idea. I was excited for a couple of reasons. One, I like his
took that bait
movies.
right away. I thought there was going to be like some discussion there. I thought you were going to want to think it over, and it was like 5 seconds. Like, yeah, we do an Affleck series.
Well,
Yeah.
I get
The
to
real
talk about
reason
his.
I'm here is because I'm the one who owns the only 7 copies of Live by Night in the country.
Oh yeah,
I
that's
can't
probably
wait
true.
to see Live
And
by Night.
you're gonna need to go through me.
Actually, so Live by Night was the reason I brought it up in the first
Yeah.
place. So I've just been reading that, and I remember the movie coming out, him having directed it. It's one of the few movies of his I haven't seen, and it's a great book. And I remember the reviews of that movie were just abysmal. Like, I was very excited about it, and then I was like, I guess there's no reason to see this, so I never did. And so now I want to know, how did Affleck fuck this thing up? Because it's all there. This should
I
be
started
an incredible
it.
movie.
I watched maybe 15 or 20 minutes of it, and remember, this is just boring and it's not clicking. And I'll check it out later, whatever. And I never did. Because the thing about his first 3 movies, especially the first 2, is how electric they are. And they just like, they throw you right into things, and you are immediately understanding who's what and what's going on and why X, Y, Z is happening. And Live by Night was very like playing dress up is what it felt like for the first 15 minutes.
Brian, I know you're not going to be episode. We're going to talk plenty about Live by Night when Live by Night comes out. Let's focus down here. I was excited for 2 reasons. One, like the directorial effort by Ben Affleck that I have seen, I have also not seen Live by Night. That's the one I haven't seen. But more than that, I think Ben Affleck is just a fascinating person to talk about as far as an actor, a creator, a personality, a celebrity. Just fascinating in all of those things. So very much fits into our sort of mission statement of doing fascinating filmmakers or filmmakers that fascinate us, right?
Well, one of the only filmmakers we're probably ever going to talk about where we knew of them before they became a filmmaker that we could talk about on this show. Like, before Joseph Kosinski got the Tron job, we knew him as a commercial director, but that was it. Like, the entire life up to that was something that we had to learn after the fact. And same thing with Karan Kusama, who basically made a just out of school student film and then became a famous person, or at least to people like us, a famous person, a name that you would know. But Ben Affleck, everyone knows Ben Affleck, and everyone knew Ben Affleck. Like, it was a big deal that Ben Affleck was directing a feature film. So I think it's a conversation that's going to be a little bit different from the ones we've had, because we can't quite distance Ben Affleck, the director of Gone Baby Gone and several other films, from Ben Affleck, the tabloid personality / celebrity / famous guy that existed so long in our minds and hearts and whatever else before then.
I disagree. This being the only film he's directed where he's not in it, it is easier to do that.
Yeah, he's not in it, but he did cast his brother in it.
But he's all over it.
Yeah, he did cast his brother in it, and it's about Boston. So all the things that make Ben Affleck are very much exist within this this movie, even though he doesn't appear in it, right? We should start out by asking this question, and Brian, I'll let you go first. Pre-Gone Baby Gone, forget about now. Pre-Gone Baby Gone, what were your feelings on Ben Affleck?
I was never a hater. Always enjoyed. I mean, he was the bomb in Phantoms. But in that time, we were in that kind of falling off period because Hollywoodland, a movie 17 people saw.
That was one of them.
Yeah, I think Bobby, you saw that in the theater. I think.
No, I definitely saw that on a Blockbuster DVD.
Back in the time where you were buying everything.
Yeah, I definitely saw that movie. I didn't see it in the movie theater, but I saw it pretty much immediately when it came out on DVD because I was a big fan.
We're post Daredevil. He's still a marketable actor, but he's not. I mean, he's not Batman yet. He's not.
No.
So I feel like that, and this is not the answer to your question, but he gets the Batman job, and there's backlash of like Affleck, like ridiculous. But I still think he was kind of staying in his lane in those mid 2000s, and until he wanted to do something different. Movies like Hollywoodland, and just not just trying to be the rom-com guy or the big action guy. What's his big action movie after Paycheck?
Was Paycheck a big action movie?
I mean,
supposed to be
Smoking.
Okay,
he's
enough.
in Smoking Aces.
Yeah, but he's padding the stats of that
Ensemble
cast.
He doesn't really do another action movie until Batman v Superman. Really,
Okay.
Really.
Right. And 04, you have the disaster of surviving Christmas.
Well, that's what I want to say is the fact that you're
Gandolfini. Whoa.
underselling.
That's a movie that exists.
Yes,
You're underselling the Affleck fatigue.
Yes, you're underselling not just the fatigue, but just the patented, like the complete and utter failure of his acting career pre-Hollywoodland for that early 2000s period. Because you've got in the early 2000s, you're doing fine, right? You got Changing Lanes, you got Some of All Fears, which are not really like are mid-level, but they're hits, right? They're hit, they make money.
They're profitable movies.
They're profitable movies. He does Daredevil, which does decently well, but it is sort of a joke very quickly.
Where's
And
Reindeer
then-
Games fit into all that? Before we
Reindeer
go
Games
on,
is way
2000.
early. That's way
2000.
earlier.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I feel like that's maybe the start of this decline period.
Well, no, because I mean, Reindeer Games is 2000. He then does Bounce with and he does Bounce. He does Pearl Harbor in 2001. It's just Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back 2001, but he does Changing Lanes and Some of All Fears in 2002. Two movies that make money, right? 2003, Daredevil comes out, makes money, but you can already feel a little bit of the who asked for Ben Affleck in this movie sort of vibe to it. And 2003 is also the year that Gigli comes out. And Gigli is a colossal, out of this world flop, like just in every possible way, critically, commercially, culturally, is a joke and is a hated movie, right? Same year he does Paycheck, which people also hate. I think Brian kind of likes.
I mean, I think I saw it 2 or 3 times.
No, I'm mixing it up with that Mel Gibson movie that you like.
Oh,
Payback.
Payback. I love Payback.
Yes,
that's a great movie. Yeah,
that's what I'm mixing it up with. So again,
Quick aside.
Yes.
Do you think if the Gigli debacle happened today, it would be as big of a deal? I'm pointing at one thing. They spent money on like 4,000 prints, and the movie was gone in 2 weeks.
yes,
Like the burning of money that's and there was a bit of advertisement, but it wasn't like touted as a blockbuster or anything. I just feel like movies like that, when they die now, they just disappear and they're not tabloid fodder.
but that's the thing. There's a cultural component to Gigli as well. There's the whole Jennifer Lopez thing as well,
And let me ask this question. Is that the reason? Is the association with her, that relationship that was just all over everything? He's in the video for Jenny from the Block, which came out like right around this time, which I forgot all about. I was just reading that again, and I don't know, I just must have blocked that out of my memory or something. No pun
I see
intended.
what you did there.
Yeah, I didn't mean to. I swear I didn't mean to. But like, because I'm kind of with you, Brian. Like, no one has asked me yet, but I'll just give you my 2 cents on Ben Affleck pre-Gone Baby Gone. Like, as a fan, I grew up with Kevin Smith. Bobby and I have talked about that on the show before. Brian, you and I have had 1,000 Kevin Smith conversations. We're of the generation. And so he was kind of part of that universe for me. He was really good in those movies. And I liked that he had this career that kind of expanded way out beyond the bonds of that. I liked Good Will Hunting a lot and always was a fan of that script and that performance. He's great in that movie, even though he's a supporting character in that movie. And I went to see all those like early 2000s Ben Affleck movies, not Gigli, because I knew enough about it that I knew I was probably not going to like it. But I was in the audience for like a Reindeer Games, like everything that he was doing after that period. I enjoyed them and I enjoyed him. And I remember I disliked her early movies are great too, by the way. Like, I'm not a fan of Jennifer Lopez at all, but Out of Sight and The Cell are like all-time classics for me. So she had a great agent, at least for a while. So I don't know. It's like this period, 2002, 2003 or so, like out of nowhere. I feel like I just hated both of them, and anything they were associated with, I was like, this is garbage, and why won't these people go away? And what is that? Is that me? Am I just a terrible person?
Well, no, that was the general sentiment for the world at that point, because
It was just an oversaturation.
it was oversaturation. Affleck is in 3 to 4 movies a year starting in like 2000. So, and most of them
it's no Jude Law's 2004.
no,
Yeah,
nothing
sure.
is.
Nothing will be.
Nothing will be. But like what I'm saying here is like, this is what it is. It's 2001, it's Pearl Harbor and Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. And then 2002, it's Changing Lanes, The Sum of All Fears, right? It's also the Jenny from the Block video is also in 2002. 2003 is Daredevil, Gigli, and Paycheck. 3 just like, you're taking body blows after body blow, right? You're putting out movies and they're not doing well. 2004 is Jersey Girl and Surviving Christmas. And then he doesn't do another movie for 2 years after that. He takes a little bit of a break. But then in 2006, he's in 4 movies. He's in Man About Town, Clerks 2, which is obviously a cameo.
Smoking Aces.
Hollywoodland and Smoking Aces are all 2006. Now, Hollywoodland is the movie where people go, hold on, wait a second. He's good in this. And he's not playing a romantic lead. He's not playing
He's playing
a funny
washed-up
guy.
actor, which is fantastic.
And it's an
perfect
interesting
choice at that point.
Yes, it's an interesting movie, and also it's an interesting role. And he gets some Oscar buzz around that. He obviously doesn't get nominated, but he gets some Oscar buzz around that. And I think that very much leads into, the Gone Baby Gone, being something people are a little more open to, because this sort of Affleck renaissance was starting to happen a little bit. And that movie, I think, very smartly, and him not being in it, I think allows that to keep going, because it feels like he's pulling back, right? It feels like, I'm going to make a movie, I'm going to direct it, but I'm really serious about directing it. So I'm not going to direct it just so I can make myself the star of a movie I want to star in. I'm going to make a movie because I want to direct it. Yes, I'll cast my brother, but my brother is well respected at this point, much more than I am at this point as far as movies go.
Sure.
A totally unproblematic guy to talk about in the year 2024 as well.
But why? Because I mean, Jesse James isn't until the same year as Gone Baby Gone. What had Casey done that got notices in those intermediate?
Let me look it up for you, my friend.
Yeah. And then I have another question. Do we think anything about? I mean, Dennis Lehane and the success of Mystic River, feeding into this being the project?
Well, Ben Affleck claims this is his favorite novel, and who am I to disagree with him about that? I think it's great too.
Oh,
so
Brian, you're forgetting the Ocean's movies, my friend.
I am forgetting the Ocean's movies. Which he is an integral part of.
Yeah, an integral part of Lonesome Jim, Jerry. Like, he's doing little movies, doing indie movies, and he's in a couple of big movies. He's just an actor that people are like, I kind of like Casey Affleck.
It's like Ben Affleck, but without the baggage.
Yeah, exactly.
Until well, at the time, I'm not talking about now. I'm talking about at the time. Because I remember thinking that about him, because this was a period where, like I said, I was not a Ben Affleck fan anymore, but like Casey Affleck kind of gives you those Ben Affleck qualities that you love so much at the time, without, like I said, the baggage, without having everything else, the tabloid stuff and just the flops. I
mean, I'll say it right now. Casey Affleck is a better actor than his brother, and
of course he is.
No, yes, for sure, 100%.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%. But Brian, have you seen that meme where it's like, it's the crying meme from Interstellar of Matthew McConaughey, and it says, "You would cry too if your son grew up to be Casey Affleck."
Right.
But yes, Ben Affleck claims he loves this book. He wants to make it. He considered starring in it. He also considered having Jennifer Lopez. That was his first choice to be the Michelle Monaghan part in the film. And look, we talked about the sort of thing about Jennifer Lopez that was really tough at the time, and I think it wouldn't have helped the movie. I think it would have hurt the movie a lot if she was in it just from a PR perspective. I do not like Jennifer Lopez very much, just as a personality most of the time.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
She can be a very good actress, like you mentioned, Nick, and she's shown it in the last few years as well with Hustlers as well. She's excellent in that film. She has the ability to be good in something, in the right tone, the right thing. She could have been good in this, right? She absolutely could have been good in this. But I feel
think
like
it would have detracted from what this movie is, though.
Yes, she's bigger than the movie. That's the problem. The movie is a small movie, and putting her in it would have changed the whole dynamic of the movie.
She can't play. Like, one of the things I love about this movie, and boy, do I love a lot of things in this movie, is the split protagonist thing that it does, where you have a male character and a female character, and they're two sides of the same coin. They're kind of inseparable, and they need to be equal. And so you put...
Are we calling this a split protagonist movie?
Oh, I think it is.
I will argue with you about that.
All right.
Yeah, no, I mean, I almost feel like, and this is not maybe the time to get into it, but Angie only seems to exist for the scene at the end of the movie.
I think Angie's the beating fucking heart of this movie, but we'll get there.
We're gonna get into one of these discussions with Nick where he's like, but you see, if you really look under the surface, what they're talking about here, and that's what makes her so important.
If you were to read the original first printing of the novel, then you would understand that Monahan is telegraphing those pages that were cut that I got from my friend who has an agent. Like, she knew what was on the original page, and she brought it home.
Boy, I feel like I'm going to get ganged up on a lot too, and that's fine. That's I'm prepared. I'm a big Dennis Lehane guy, and I love this movie a lot. So,
but this,
sorry, it's going to happen.
Sorry, 1998 Dennis Lehane novel. It's a novel the same name, right, Nick?
Yes.
And it's a series of books, right? The Kenzie and Gennaro is like the two characters who persist through these books.
And there's a little bit of a recurring storyline with the two of them that kind of goes through, but each one is a self-contained. They're mystery novels. They're detective novels.
This idea that a lot of these authors do, where they have some rotating characters or some underlying story that goes through, but you could read the third one and not have to read the first one necessarily, and still enjoy it and get what you want.
Yeah, I would say, though, particularly with this one, like this is the one where the relationship changes very strongly, which is important in all of them, but it's kind of just there in the first three. And with what happens in the movie, with what happens at the end of the story, I think this one is the one that kind of stands out. So it's a little harder to develop that the way he does with just one movie. Like, this would have been great as the fourth in the film series, but you're never going to get four of them made, I guess. So we kind of have to contain all of that in one film, kind of get that backstory and that history all in, and it does to some extent.
I mean, okay. Well, let's get into talking about the movie itself, and I will say I saw this in the theater in 2007. I really enjoyed it. I was rooting for Affleck 100% at the time. Same as you, Nick. I loved the earlier stuff. I loved the Kevin Smith stuff. I loved a lot of that. I mean, Go Will Hunting. I think him in Shakespeare in Love. He's hilarious in Shakespeare in Love.
What is the play and what is my part?
No, my favorite line when we talk about this.
You're not going to do it that way, are you?
Yes, that's exactly. You're not going to do it that way. Right? Lost my cackling, lost my mind. And obviously by the time he does Batman, he's full. The reactions to that were stupid because he had already had a fully reformed career by the time Batman had come out. He had done excellent work. He had, his one of his movies won Best Picture. It was a weird thing for that to be ganged up on. But I was very excited for this. Saw it and I really enjoyed it. This is, I think, the first time I've watched it since 2007 or 2008, whenever, I might have gotten it on DVD and watched it one more time. I don't really remember. I watched it this time in 2024, and it was almost like I was watching a completely new movie. That's what it felt like to me, because I remembered so little of the intricacies of the movie. I remembered broad stroke stuff, but even the twist stuff at the end, I was like, I know that somebody's in on it. That's all I had in my head, and I think it's the cops. But I had no clear
shady.
There's a twist coming in this film, and I was.
You mean the cops aren't on the up and up?
When a cop tells me something, I believe him, and he makes up that face.
Oh,
that Casey Affleck face.
It's a good moment.
That sarcastic Casey Affleck face. So I enjoyed it then. Watching it now, I also enjoyed it. I want to get into, the stuff I really liked about it, the stuff I didn't, like we always do. But Nick, do you want to kind of do a little plot summary for the people at home in case, they're joining us not watching the movie? They should watch the movie, but if you haven't watched the movie,
at plot summaries.
I mean, this is your baby, Nick.
It is. It's like the most complicated plot we've talked about thus far. I mean, basically, you don't have
to give away all the twists, just the general overview.
I'm not going to. I'm going to give you the 30-second. Yeah,
okay.
You guys can take over from there. It is about a missing child case, a missing persons case. It's a young girl in South Boston whose mother claims that she just left her for an hour or something like that, and she was abducted. So you've got the entire sort of media circus and the police and everyone obviously looking for her. It's 72 hours after the crime has been committed, which, they say in the movie is past the time when these things are usually resolved in a positive way. While this entire world or this entire city is looking for this missing child and becomes like a big news story and things like that, the Kenzie and Gennaro characters who are from the neighborhood, the girl's aunt, who is not her blood relative. It's see that I'm already lost in the weeds here.
Yeah, you're getting very in the weeds. A little girl is kidnapped in South Boston, and the family, it enlists the help of a private detective team who's a local to the neighborhood They come in to try to find the little girl, handle the neighborhood component of the mystery, talk to people that cops won't talk to.
Talk to the people that they know and do it in a way that sort of the police are not able to because they are kind of friends with everyone, kind of connected in the neighborhood and people who are involved with the criminal underworld in this sort of small region. You know, they like, that's one of the things that's really interesting in the books as well, is like they are connected with everyone.
Asking Nick to do a plot summary is the worst idea in the world. He's like, the other books, I'm only about 1/4 into the plot description, but let me take a break and take a little diversion.
It's explained right away in the movie, right? Like they went to high school with like everyone they talked to over the course of this story, which is important.
It is important. I will take over the plot summary. So
See, he's still conceited.
The cops begrudgingly decide to help them, and together with the cops, they start to unravel this mystery of what happened to the little girl. But even when they find the little girl, things aren't really over yet. There's more going on under the surface than we know, or even our main character knows.
I could have probably said that, I feel like.
You
then
could
why
have,
didn't you?
but I mean, you were definitely taking the long way round to get there. So
strong Ben Wyatt vibes. Who doesn't have gay thoughts?
So our main character, obviously, Nick claims there's two main characters, but our main character is Patrick.
He claims that there was
to go. Well, just duck out and come back in about an hour.
I'm very interested because I did write down. I want to talk about the Michelle Monaghan character very much so, because I do have some thoughts about that. All jokes aside, but
for the record, I wrote that split protagonist thing. That's like in the last chapter of my master's thesis.
Well, I'm here to
maybe let's not even talk about any of this. Maybe I should just check out for an hour, come back, and we'll catch up after you guys have discussed the movie, and we'll just end the
Brian
show.
and I are going to sit in and do be your thesis review board again. We're going to take it and we're going to decide whether or not you really passes muster or not. No,
it's excellent. I'll pass.
I want to start out with this. How do we feel about Casey Affleck's performance in the movie, basically? Or should we start with just general thoughts about the movie? We haven't even talked in general about the movie thoughts.
Well, I'm going to answer that question.
Okay, go ahead, Brian.
There's a moment, and I'll talk about the moment when we get to the moment, that is like maybe the best acting I've ever seen in this movie.
Okay,
I can't wait to find out what that is.
I told you about it 9 years ago, and it's fine that you don't remember.
I don't save my text from 9 years ago.
Yeah,
good point. But yeah, there's a thing that happens that is the most immersed I've ever been into believing a character, and it physically affects me watching it.
Yeah. I mean, I think Casey Affleck is great in this. I think he fits into what his brother is trying to do nearly perfectly into what this movie is. Just as my general thoughts on the movie quickly before we break into it, because we should probably do that. I think that it is an incredibly strong debut movie from a first-time filmmaker. I don't think you're going to get many more solid, just feels like somebody's been doing it this is their fifth movie, type of feel to a movie than this. A lot of time from first-time filmmakers. Obviously helps that he worked in the movie business for so long before he made this, but regardless, he's got a voice, he's got a point of view, he's got a visual aesthetic he's putting on, which are all really impressive for a first movie. I think that I think it's obvious from the way the movie is structured that it is his favorite book, because the movie is very much structured like a book, right? Because there's a point in the middle where you're like, oh, the movie's over. And then it's like, no. We got a whole other second movie that we just put on top of this first movie that you're going to get into now.
So like a split protagonist.
Like a split protagonist. I'm not saying
I want to rebut all of this, but I'll keep my mouth shut.
Negative. It's not. I'm not saying. I kind of like.
Yeah, no, I know, but like I'm not sure. I think there's a cohesiveness to the.
I didn't say it wasn't cohesive. I didn't say it wasn't cohesive.
I think saying it's two different movies is taking it a little far.
Well, because I do feel like when you're watching it, I like the fact that it plays with structure more than you would think a normal first-time filmmaker would play with structure. In the fact that if you kind of ended it around the time where the girl is quote-unquote found, you would have a pretty sad but pretty complete story arc for a lot of the people in the movie, right?
Yeah.
But then there is more to come, and I think the movie the scripting on the scripting part and the directorial pacing part of it is very interesting, more interesting than a typically structured movie, for not taking the book and trying to force the thing to feel more like a traditionally narratively structured film.
Well, I agree with that.
That's a compliment from me.
The choice, the ability to do that, maybe not so much the choice, but yeah, the story basically resolves itself about 60% of the way through.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only things that are revealed. Like it's a complex plot, and that doesn't come from Ben Affleck, obviously. But
right.
I think, you know how I feel about this movie. You don't need to ask. I mean, I'd call this almost perfect. Let me just say one thing about it.
Yeah,
like
of course,
what
Nick.
I think is most brilliant about Affleck's contribution to this, and I'll use the B word for it. It's that this story, I think, is like, it's a great story. I mean, it was a great book. I'll talk less about the book, I promise. But like, I could see, I feel like I have this ability to see what the best version and a worst version of any movie could be. We've talked about that on the show a little bit. And I think this is a really tough story to navigate as a director. Like, as you said, this does feel like the assured work of somebody who's been doing it a lot longer than Ben Affleck, who's making his debut with this, because this story could go off the rails so easily. This movie could be so bad and so clunky and so disjointed, and just the emotions of it, the sort of moral questions of it are so complicated, and they're so hard to get across in a movie in a way that is natural and is compelling. You know, Brian, I can't wait to hear what this moment is that you were talking about, but I do feel like there are moments like that scattered throughout this movie. And it feels like a lesser director. I talk about lesser directors a lot on this show and what they would have done. Like, imagine how badly they could have fucked this up. Like, this could have been just an exploitative telenovela, soap opera, like, it's got all the elements where it could be that. And I think it's such a fine line this movie has to walk to have it have any kind of emotional resonance at all, and not just be, tragedy porn with a Boston accent. And I have to give him a lot of credit for that. Or do you guys think it's just tragedy porn?
No.
No, I don't think it's that. No.
Back to what Bobby was saying, like, that whole, and again, it's wrong. The whole like, every Indiana Jones movie, if Indiana Jones wasn't there, it would happen the exact same way.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what that second movie piece that Bobby's talking about is like everything that Patrick, he's along for the ride for the first half.
Mm-hmm.
And if he weren't there, everything would have been over.
Yeah,
there would have been a happily ever after for some people and a not so happily for others, and it would have just ended. But because he's got the pieces, we get to watch him put it together for that second half, and that's a lot of fun.
Yeah. I would say, like, for me, my main, I guess, not gripes, because I think this is it's a 4 out of 5 star movie. Like, I think this is a great movie. Some of this just is personal taste, right? Obviously, I'm sure the book is incredibly dour, right? I'm sure, because
it's worse.
I'm
Quite
sure
a bit
it's worse.
Yeah.
Judging by the other movie adaptations of his work, which are all also very dour, I'm sure this is very dour.
I love that movie too, for the record.
I do feel like sometimes the movie gets weighted down a little bit by just how dour it is from moment A to moment Z. Not that I want it to be funny. Like, I don't want bits happening or some like funny local color to come in and do some like, little jokey jokes. But, everything just sort of goes right from like sad to sadder, and intense to more intense. And I felt a little oppressed sometimes by that by the end of the movie, I would say. Because there isn't really a place to like just go like, okay, this is like a relief part of it. Because even like that mid break is like, oh, a kid's dead. Like, that is like the mid break of the movie where you're like, okay, I guess it's over. The kid died. And it's like, oh my God, like this is our like, sort of end to this first section of the film. So that would be my only real criticism of it, is as a movie, I feel like it doesn't have as many levels as I wish it did. I guess it's just a couple of moments or a couple of or characters or whatever that just let me sort of, it makes the 2 hours, it's about 2 hours, right? The movie, it makes it feel a little bit longer to me than it actually is.
Oh, see, it flies by for me.
I feel like it flies by too. Yeah. Yeah.
You guys just love sadness, I guess.
Well, and you're right, and I really can't disagree with that. It is a
Mhm.
very grim, it's a very dark movie. Although, again, I mentioned the character being the beating heart of the movie. Like,
Mhm.
there's a choice that a character makes in this movie that is just like, I don't know. It's the most lovely, sort of sweetest thing. It's a bad idea, but like I have to sympathize with it. But I think what makes it like not unbearable, because it is pretty grim and pretty dark, is one, you have this wonderful supportive relationship at the center of it, this split protagonist thing we've been talking about. That's not a thing like like to see a couple like that in a movie is not a thing. Like it feels so real and so genuine and so serious and so like an actual loving, respectful relationship. There's that. And there's also this thread of dark humor. Like I laughed a few times in this movie because, sometimes the situation is so grim. It's like that gallows humor that it has.
Mhm.
And I think
Some of those Amy Ryan deliveries are very funny.
they
Like,
are. Yeah.
Like how completely divorced she is from the reality of the situation. Like, oh, come on, just doing some drugs, like whatever.
And I mean, and Affleck does have, just like his brother has, right? This, I think, innate sense of how to sort of, without being goofy, bring out a little bit of odd humor in situations that don't really have much humor. Just good at it, right? I mean, it helps that Casey Affleck is like, it's so funny that he is Ben Affleck's brother, though. They do look alike facially in a lot of ways, but their body types couldn't be more different. And he's just got that, like, he's so spindly and small that he's able to play that kind of angry, like, little dog thing sometimes that can definitely be intimidating and intense, but he can also use that for humor as well, in dark, mostly dark humor in this movie.
Well,
Obviously,
one of the other things I mean, not that I forgot he was in it, but I thought Ed Harris was a little bit less in this movie. And seeing it this time, like, he is really, really important here. It's a great, you guys agree with me, right? That supporting performance, Remy
he's great in
Brissac,
it.
that character, he's like, I'm a big Ed Harris guy anyway. He makes me cry in the abyss every time I see
I
it.
figured it out. This is my 4th time seeing the movie.
Okay.
And
I think mine too. Yeah.
Each time we see Remy's name at the end of the movie written out.
Mhm.
And each time I think his name is Remy Broussard. Until I see that, I'm like, oh, it's Brissac. Okay. And I proceed to forget it for the next few years until I watch the movie again. So it's like the tombstone is like the MIB flashy thing for me. Like, I just
everybody in this movie, every actor in this movie is doing a good job, right? I think everyone's bringing it. We've got a lot of character actors. I think all three of us are big fans of character actors, showing up in movies, doing their thing.
Well, Morgan Freeman just Morgan Freeman's it until the last.
I was going to say,
Oh yeah, for
very
sure.
much so.
For sure. Yeah. He's like, oh, you need me to be here as a very,
If I was to come there, I can't do it.
I mean, Ed Harris is also giving
Oh, carpet, sweet carpet.
Ed Harris is also giving the more gentler days of the internet, Brian. That comes from. Ed Harris is also giving an Ed Harris ass supporting performance here, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. Like, I wish he would do that in every movie.
He does.
There's no
basically
movie
at most.
No. I mean, like in other movies that he's not in. I wish we could just
Oh,
have
yeah.
Ed Harris, just Ed Harrising.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Nick, back to Angie and Patrick. Like I said earlier, that she kind of is set up to do that one thing at the end because it's a huge moment. Like they're together. They're not married, right? They're together. And he continually refers to her as his employee in front of the prospective client
Or his associate. Yeah.
Yeah, my associate, my employee. Yeah,
Yeah.
and she works for me, that sort of thing.
Mm.
But she is constantly undermining every choice he wants to make, and he lets it happen because they're together.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, I think that he trusts her as like,
Yeah, she's his conscience. She's his better half in a lot of ways.
just as like someone who he can make sure he's making the right decision, right? That's what it feels like a lot of the time. And they must feel like partners, even in business, even if he calls her his employee or his associate or whatever. They feel like
I think he
definitely
really
partners.
only does that in front of people where it's like, they're misogynist, so I have to sort of play this off, even though he's not sexist himself.
Yeah, or like I want us to seem like we're more of a put together big shot organization than just like I do it at my apartment.
Me and my girlfriend being detectives together.
Yeah. But I do want to talk about this, Nick. I want because I don't know if you think there's a better place plot wise to talk about their relationship and how you want to kind of dig into your thoughts on it, or if you want to do the top here, or we can just start going through the movie a little bit. What do you want to do, Nick?
I think we should just start going through the movie, and I think
Okay.
that'll come out hopefully as we talk about it.
So I love the opening of the movie. I was just say this. I love the visual motif of the beginning of the movie quite a bit. This very naturalistic, and it's the only time he does it really is the beginning and the end of the movie. This very naturalistic, almost documentary feeling camera work and sound design vibe of like,
oh yeah, it's all long lenses from very
Yeah.
far away, and we're just seeing regular people doing their thing in South Boston. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great. It's like it's neorealism, like
Yeah.
almost.
And I love it. And I was talking to Brian. I texted Brian last night while I was watching the movie, and I said, it's weird because this movie really makes Boston, and especially South Boston, Dorchester, kind of seem like hell. But it also kind of makes me miss being in Boston. I spent a lot of time in Boston. And I was like, man, I kind of miss this. Because I had friends who lived in South Boston for years.
You think you're better than me?
And it really captures that vibe incredibly well. And I saw it in the dossier, Nick, and I thought I remembered this, and I wrote this on my notes. Lots of actual residents of South Boston are used here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even some have speaking roles in some of the bar scenes and stuff like that as well. But you can really feel like little details. Like I love when they show the newscaster and he's got like no pants on and he's like standing on top of that apple box or
The
whatever.
apple
I'm like,
box,
this
yeah.
is great. This is such a good little detail, And I loved that. The voiceover I think is good. Don't get me wrong. I think the voiceover is good. It's well written. It's well performed. It's not my favorite way to start a movie with 3 minutes of voiceover or whatever it is. But I appreciate what he's saying. I think some of it, some of this is the movie is incredibly solid and incredibly sure-handed for a first-time filmmaker. There are some first-time filmmakers things here. And I think this is one of those things to me, which is they're trying to capture the essence of a detective novel, obviously, right? We're going to start with the voiceover.
Right. And this is a genre film, right? And I think
of course,
he knows that.
Yes.
He's very cognizant of that. So this
Yes.
is not, it could go artsy drama, and I feel like he never lets go of the responsibility. Like, oh, this has to be a detective movie. This has to be a mystery thriller in some sense. So that convention doesn't bother me. Although my feeling is I don't like voiceover to start a movie either. But if you're going to do it at the beginning and the end, you got to do it somewhere in the middle. And I don't feel like we really get it anywhere else.
He doesn't. No, he doesn't. There would have been that middle part where the movie kind of shifts, right? Would have been interesting. A good time to bring that back, right? It's a kind of pace it out.
Exactly. Like, why not do it there?
Yeah, but again, I could have taken the voiceover again. Really like this movie, so this is not. I could have done the voiceover being just a little less at the beginning, even just because there are some things that Affleck is saying in that voiceover that I think senior Affleck is conveying beautifully, just visually, with looking at the city and stuff like that. So a little bit less is more there for me, but I still think it's a strong opening, and it really orients you in the place where you're going to be living for the next 2 hours. Very much so. Really like that a lot. And this is the time where we start to see the Amy Ryan's character, right, and the family, where they're kind of talking to the police, and it kind of the reporters, and it kind of transitions into him watching it on television, right? This is how the sort of beginning morphs into the actual thrust of the story here. Again, we got great character actors, right? We got Amy Madigan and Titus Welliver as the brother and sister-in-law.
Also, Titus Welliver's mustache.
Oh yes, I'm gonna say Titus Welliver just rocking a fucking stash in this movie, baby.
This was that's because he was on Deadwood at the time, I think. And
is that what it is? Is that the reason why it is?
Oh, really?
Was it? Yeah, was it Deadwood? Was that the show he was on? Because it was
He was
something
on it,
like
yeah.
that. I read it. Yeah,
he was on.
So
that makes a
they
lot of
wouldn't let him
sense.
shave
Then.
it. Yep.
That makes a lot of sense.
Because I could see that guy having that, but
Uh-huh.
also it's a little excessive. Yeah,
it's huge.
It's one of the.
So
Again,
He looks like a Guess Who character.
Does your character have a mustache?
What a great reference. No one's going to get that, but that's what I like about you.
And Amy Madigan's also really good. I mean, I think that, and then we meet Amy Ryan, who obviously is what I would call like the breakout of this movie, right? This movie makes her movie career, essentially. This catapults her from somebody nobody knows to the person you cast as
Anything you want.
anything
Anything
you want,
you
but a
want,
lot
yeah.
of times less intense versions of this character, right? Someone who is tough, and usually smarter than this. Like that's usually plays smart characters from here on out, but she's got a little bit of that. Same thing with Melissa Leo, right? It's the same type of performance that catapults you into now you can just be in all these dramas all across the board because we know you can do it and people like you, right? So that happens very quickly from this. She's excellent in this movie. I really forgot that she's not in the second half of the movie really at all. I totally forgot about that. So you meet her in there, and then we also obviously this is when we meet in with the Casey Affleck and Michelle Monaghan characters. I guess the beginning, the first third or fourth of this movie is just sort of getting the investigation started, right? Which is the family, the brother and sister-in-law come. They're basically like, we want to hire you to help with the investigation.
Why do you think he's reticent to say yes for a job to be helpful to do what he does?
Well, he seems less resident than she does, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. Right. She wants to say no, that's not our thing. The police should do their. I'm sorry. Yeah, he wants the job.
He wants the job.
I flipped that over.
I mean, her thing, right, is that she doesn't want to end up finding a little kid like in a dumpster somewhere, and how that's going to affect her and him. Like, and also she has that sort of sense too, I think, of like, this might be a little out of our depth, right? We go chase down people who have skipped on bail, and stuff like that.
Cheating husbands,
whatever it might be. Like, this is not what we do. And, it's obviously that, they don't say this in this movie or whatever, but Casey Affleck's character seems like he's got a little bit that thing in him where there's supposed to be more than him chasing down bail jumpers and, struggling every day to figure out where the next case is coming from. Like, this could be something that really means something, that really puts their name on the map. They don't say this, but you get that sense from his performance, right? That is sort of what he's thinking. Like, why would we turn this down? It's work. Like, it could be the gateway to something bigger. Like, we could really help as well. And I like that in these moments, right, there are these little clues, right? When the stuff that the Amy Madigan character is saying about, people not wanting her to come here. The cops don't want her to come here. The Tice Welliver character doesn't want her to come here.
Lionel,
that's right, Lionel. With that mustache, I should have remembered. So
yeah,
regal.
That's a very Lionel mustache.
It is a very Lionel mustache. And, they decide to let's go talk to Helene, who is the Amy Ryan character. And if we talk to her and we decide we don't want to do it, we'll walk away and no questions asked. Right. And they go to her. They go to the
way those two characters talk about this character, their sister and sister-in-law, is, I think, the setup to who Helene is going to be, and the way it pays off when we finally meet her. Amy Ryan's performance it's just brilliant. It's perfect. We know exactly the kind of person that Helene is, and she just kind of you're expecting it and you get it. You get it in droves. It's amazing, right away.
And what's her name? I don't know the actress's name. The woman who plays Dottie.
Jill Twig. Yeah, who's one of those non-professional actors. Yeah, what a great performance that is.
It's great because I'm like, yeah, I've met this girl.
Yeah.
I've met this girl in Boston for sure.
Fuck you, cocksucker.
Yeah, everybody wants their piece.
I love. It's a little later in the film, but she's doing a stand-up interview with one of the news reporters, and she's talking about how they're going to have a candlelight visual in the neighborhood later on that night. And I guess the actress, she, non-professional actress, supposedly the story is she was just she was picking up her kid from school. They had blocked off a street or something, I think in the scouting phase, or maybe they had just started production. Although, wouldn't this character be cast by then? And Ben Affleck saw her and probably heard her and was like, this person needs to be in my movie. And she is. She gives it this great grit and this real sort of Boston hard-nosed realism. And I guess the visual thing was she said it that way and Affleck was going to correct her and have her go back and say it the right way. It's no, that stays. That's perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Who can name the other movie she's been in? 3 years later.
I was going to ask if she'd ever been in another movie. That would be my guess. It's a great guess.
No,
okay.
It is 2010, but it is not Affleck associated, but it is Boston associated.
In 2010.
I'll give you a hint, Bobby. It's a movie I could not think of the other day.
That helps me
when we were doing the box office game thing. So it's Tron year.
Mhm.
It's The Fighter.
It's The Fighter.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great movie for her to be in. I
Yeah,
don't remember
also,
her in
yeah.
that though.
Melissa Leo.
Just interchangeable part.
But that scene where like they come in, they're talking to Helene, right? And they're both like laying back on the couch.
Yep.
And you would never guess she's a non-professional actor by the way that she's interacting with the Amy Ryan character in that moment, because it doesn't come off like she's struggling to say those lines. It just feels very natural.
They seem like they've known each other for
yes.
the length of time these two characters have known each other in the movie.
Because when a couple scenes later, when they go to the bar, right, the bartender is obviously not a real actor, right? He's obviously probably owns that bar, right? But you can tell he's not a real actor, right? When he has to do lines, you can tell he's like kind of like, I'm a little bit scared that I'm talking to the camera. You do get none of that from Dottie, and she just plays it off so well. And these scenes, again, give Ben Affleck a lot of credit for this type of thing. Working with actors like this, especially non-professional actors, is very difficult. And being able to make them feel natural in the room with everybody else there being hyper professional actors, right? Everyone else there is just like, we've been acting our entire lives and it's all we think about. It's all we're dedicated to. And then this woman who's never acted before and is great and really, I think, brings the scene alive and really sells who Helene is just as much as Amy Ryan's performance in that scene is the way Dottie acts.
Yeah, definitely. Let me ask this question now, because this is one of the criticisms of the movie that I don't agree with, but I certainly can understand. So one of the things that has been written about this film is the Boston characters are kind of a little bit overplayed. They're caricatures. They're sort of, this is, like you were saying before, it's a Boston movie, but it does not present the most rosy picture, particularly of
No.
South Boston. And for me, I think, as I was saying before, I think Affleck handles this pretty deftly, right? Like, this could so easily be that Saturday Night Live sketch. Do you remember that with Jimmy Fallon? And, yes. Like, I feel like this movie could have so easily tipped over into just 2 hours of that. And I feel like it never does. Like, yeah, I believe that character. I believe that friendship. And again, non-professional actress up against like Titus Welliver and Amy Madigan. And that's pretty impressive too. And then Amy Ryan, who's fantastic as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know, do you guys feel like it takes the Boston stuff a little too far and makes these people just look like grotesques, or does it mostly work and mostly feel earned?
Brian, what do you think? Let him go.
I don't think it goes too far. I think it's the subset of a subset, right? I mean, it's, you've got your different areas of Southie and does Dorchester takes place in mostly?
It takes in South Boston and Dorchester. Yeah. It's two places it really takes place.
I don't think it's doing like I think
Dorchester.
Walbert country. Yeah, it's
Probably
they'll name it after eventually.
Yeah.
And Affleck being a Bostonian, right, is going to probably be more protective of that sort of thing than Johnny director hire, right? Like,
I love Johnny director hire. He's been some good films.
He's great. Yeah, we'll get him. That's our next series, actually.
Yeah, he's on our spreadsheet. Johnny director hire. My answer is, I think it does go over the top sometimes, but I'm okay with it because, like you were saying at the beginning, Nick, this is a genre movie, right? This movie is not meant to particularly show a realistic portrait of its setting, right? It's more trying to go like Brian said, here's a subset of people. These are the bad people. These are not the bad people, but these are like the rough people. Let's say the rough people, and that's all we're going to focus on. It's not like you could have probably have evened out that criticism by going, okay, here's a couple of people who are just normal, like don't have a crazy voice and some sort of crazy physical thing, and a crazy job that they do. They're all drug dealers and pimps and and whatevers.
Characters who are named Cheese.
Yeah, they're named Cheese.
It's not his real name.
Yeah, I know. I do. Yeah, obviously. But I think that, but again, I think for sort of this heightened sort of noirish detective thing, I think it works. Right. And I think those people definitely exist in Boston and South Boston. So I don't think it's totally unrealistic. But yeah, I think it's a little heightened. He's definitely playing up the yeah, you fucking asshole. Like everyone is just aggro immedely with everyone.
Who's the big guy that has the cocaine that brings the house that he?
Oh,
is it Bubba?
You're talking about Bubba?
Oh, the guy that flags the guy that kind of restarts him investigating the mystery. Yeah.
The second movie, Nick.
The second movie. Yeah, but yeah, he is Again, yeah, very much that, right? He's played off in the movie. He's as close there is as to like a friend
Sure.
of the Casey Affleck character, but he's obviously, also kind of terrible, so it's one of these
Like
things where
when he tells Patrick, you don't want to go in, you don't gotta go in, but I'm going in. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
believe him. I don't think it's gonna be like bad blood afterwards. Like,
no.
but you asked him to come strapped, he did, and now it's
Yeah. But I think that this movie lays it on thick across the board, right? I think that it's not a subtle movie for the most part, right? It is going to, any theme or any idea it's going to bring up, it is going to make sure this is a theme, this is a thing we're talking about. Again, that's not a criticism. I think that is a function of this genre, and I think it works well in this movie. I think it's done quite well in this movie.
But the fact that it's smacking you in the face, doesn't that speak to good direction?
Well, no, because you could do a subtle thing and be like, well, I wonder if they're really talking about this kind of thing.
Right. And
Not having like four characters be like, let me give you a moral quandary in a conversation and see if you can figure out how to solve it. And it's going to come up again almost directly in a scene later.
I've known you for 5 minutes. I once broke the law and planted evidence. Let me tell you a tale.
He was drinking pretty heavily in that scene, as he explains in the following day scene.
Do they think that their spouses don't have ears?
Anyway, go ahead, Nick.
I was just going to say, you got me thinking about this as a noir film, particularly. Like, there are no subtle ones, right? Like, it is a, it's a melodramatic genre in a lot of ways. And the best ones to me, and it's my favorite genre. And movies like Chinatown are, they are really heightened emotions, really heightened ideas, and big themes. They take big swings. And the ones that don't tend to be the ones that we don't remember. But, like, I compare this a lot to Chinatown, actually. I think it has the same sort of creeping darkness about it and the same, like, very damaged worldview of that movie. There's another great 70s film called Night Moves that this reminds me of a lot. I guess I do think it is heightened. I do think it is a little over the top, but like it is a genre first and foremost. I just think it's a very, very good. It's like, to me, one of the best in this genre. That is, much like horror, it's not the most reputable thing in the world. Films noir don't win Academy Awards often, or if they do, they are that plus something else. And I think this one, it's pure genre, and I just think it's a really, really well executed variation on that theme.
Yeah, here we also meet a little before, but we meet Morgan Freeman's character when they're at the house kind of talking. He shows up, and
great scene, isn't it?
He shows up just kind of be like, like, you're playing with the big boys now, or whatever, kind of scene.
Morgan Freeman does casual disdain so beautifully in this movie.
Basically, and I like that line where he says, I don't care who does it, I just want it to get done, or whatever. Obviously he's full of shit, but and I like that.
What is that? Me? Is it?
No, that's Nick. This is his chair. He always has a little mic kind of.
Is it doing
bang.
It again? Oh, I'm
yes.
sorry.
It always does it. So we get that scene. He tells them they're going to meet up with some detectives at their leisure or whatever, at their purview. The detectives will reach out to catch him up on the case. We get that bar scene in between where he talks to his friend, and you see sort of this is very much the scene, right, where we see what Patrick has to offer, right? This is the movie going, this is what he can do. Like, you don't understand. Like, first we have him kind of strike out, and then we see the benefit of him coming from this neighborhood, knowing all these people. He gets a lot of information very quickly, and also shows that he's kind of tough, right? That he's not going to just, if a dangerous situation happens, he's not going to be a shrinking violet, right? He's going to come back at it. And he's going to pull his piece, and he's going to not let people push him around or roll him over, because he's from this neighborhood, and whether people want to be assholes or not, he's going to get the information he wants to get. What do we think of this scene? This bar scene, Nick?
I think it's riveting. It's he's great in it, and I do love. There's a real intensity about it. That again, that's direction stuff, right? Like that's the kind of thing. it's another scene. You've seen bar fights before, right? You've seen these kinds of confrontations before. But yeah, it is, we get a sense of who Patrick Kenzie is in terms of his size and his everybody in that bar is like huge compared to him, particularly
Oh, yeah.
like the bartender and the guy who like kind of gets threatening with him, even the friend that he's talking to that's kind of giving him information, stuff like that. And yeah, the way he stands up to that, I mean, it's this very classic sort of confrontation. But I do feel like the movie is good enough and strong enough where there's a chance that he's going to get the shit kicked out of him in the scene. Even when he does pull the gun, like there is a tension there, like even though he's our hero. And that's a noir trope too, right? Like Humphrey Bogart used to get the crap beaten out of him in a lot of those movies. So it's a thing that we...
Kiss, bang, bang. Robert Downey Jr. trying to be the baddest ass.
Yeah.
Cut to bloody nose.
Yeah. And like, I forgot how this scene played out. And I was like, wait a minute, does he get the shit kicked out of him here? And turns out, no, he ends up pretty triumphant. But there is, I never feel like we lose the sense, we lose the tension that he's in a very bad situation and might not make it out of it unscathed.
And I love when he gets out of the bar, he's like, who are these fucking people?
Yeah.
Like, what is, like, because he as audience surrogate, like, I like that we can kind of feel the tension of, well, yeah, who wouldn't want Helene to get her kid back? That's all we're trying to do here. We're not cops, but it doesn't matter. Anyone talking out of school, doing anything even in the neighborhood of snitching is also not okay. So,
and with the guys in the bar, it's really just more like, I don't want you bringing any attention like onto this place. So that's kind of the tension of the scene also. But yeah, like I don't know. It's a great setting. Also, the lighting in the scene is. I love. I don't know what it is. Like I never hang out at dive bars during the day, but I love movie scenes set in dive bars in the daytime. That sort of like the dim lighting with like the little bit of sunlight coming in through the windows. It's a trope again. It's mostly noir films, but I just love it. It's one of those things. It's a what's the opposite of a pet peeve? It's that.
I got to think about that. Although we came up with this one. There was an event that I was thinking about going to. It was that cruise I went on. The following year, the lineup was announced. It was absolute dog shit. And I'm so happy to not be going. And I said to Jill, like, what's the opposite of FOMO? And she goes, is it joy of missing out? Is it JOMO?
JOMO. I've got JOMO about this. That's how I feel for every party I don't go to.
I'm going to run to the bathroom. I'll be right back.
Okay, you got it.
Was that a Mulaney bit, like canceled plans is heroin?
Yeah. So he's gone. I'll just finish off my thoughts on this scene, which you just kind of go on to what you're saying. Is I feel like this scene is vital because it does the two things we're talking about. It sets up his Patrick's bona fides, but it also sets up that he is not playing in safe waters, right? Because before this, he's like, it's my neighborhood. I know all these people. So you kind of expect him to walk in there and it'd be sort of like, hey, Patrick, like, and the fact
one
that
person
it's not,
is and everybody else hates him.
Yeah, the fact that it's not that is great, and we see that right away, even in the scene before that with Helene, when, Dottie is like, oh, you went to school with us. Still, I see you still kind of conceited or whatever she says to her, and she hasn't even said anything yet or whatever, and I like that we set up that, yes, they know this area, but they are not just in it like you kind of expect them to be. I think at the beginning of the movie. I want to ask you, what do you think of the score by Harry Gregson
Williams? Yeah, I think it's really good. I mean, I think it suits this perfectly. I think it's always going to pale in comparison. One of my favorite movie scores of all time is Clint Eastwood's Mystic River, also based on Dennis Lehane, also set in Boston. And that one is so good. And this one, it kind of sounds like that. It's just the B version of that. So it works. I mean, this is a very emotional movie, as we've been saying. And I think it has that nice sort of swelling, very prestige pick sort of feel about it. But it's not the Mystic River score. So,
I feel like Harry Gregson Williams in general is kind of that guy, like what you're talking about, which is, it's good. It's not quite as good as like the best ones.
Yeah, it works for what it needs to. Yeah, it gets the job done, does what it needs to do, puts in a solid day of work and then goes home. Yeah.
Yeah. Like there's a couple of times where it stands out. I think in this scene, I really noticed it because it was a little bit more present and a little different. It felt a little bit more traditionally like investigating music. It was very much going like, lots of strings or whatever going, and it felt like you were, we're figuring something out, or we're going into like the belly of the beast to figure something out. And then after this, I feel like it kind of just goes into the background a little bit more and becomes Like we'll swell it up when it's supposed to be emotional, and we'll bring it down when it's supposed to be, not, and then otherwise you won't really notice it too much.
It is good though, right? Like it's not
it's good.
overwrought.
I think it's definitely
it
good.
fits the tone of the movie kind of perfectly. So maybe it actually is a very good score that just doesn't. It's not working overtime to distinguish itself.
Yeah, it's a good score. I think it's a good score. I don't think it's a great score. But I figure that's something we could talk about in Brian Was Gone, because I don't think Brian would needs anything he has any.
Do you want to weigh in on Harry Gregson Williams?
Yeah. Love His Enemy of the State score. He didn't enemy this.
No Young Victoria.
And that's not Young Victoria. And now so he's learned stuff from his friend, right? Helene was not gone for a half an hour watching Wife Swap or whatever the hell it was she's claimed to be watching. She was at the bar doing coke for 2 hours with this guy Ray, who's her boyfriend.
What a 2007 reference, by the way.
Yeah, very 2007 reference.
Right, but
and
I like how leaving your 4-year-old alone for 30 minutes to watch a TV show is fine, but 2 hours at the bar is insane.
It is. That's crazy different. What are you talking about? She claimed to be across the street for half an hour.
I'm saying that even going, I'm saying
across the hall or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm saying even going to Dottie's is in and of itself bad.
Yes. Also already bad. Yes. But being at the bar doing coke for 2 hours, way worse.
I guess what I'm saying is the unit of time of a half hour. It's just 4 of those, which is like, it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, when they tell the story later of, the car and how hot she was, like, she's a piece of shit mother.
She is. And I think they're starting to,
hey, is that one of the themes?
Unveil that here, right? There's a lot more going on than we thought. And then after the scene, we meet Ed Harris and John Ashton's characters, the two detectives.
John Ashton, R.I.P. I forgot he was in this one.
We just lost him.
The cop partner.
Oh, always. And always really good at it. Always really solid. You can always rely on him. Good in this as well. He's got a couple of those scenes.
Always end up liking him by the end. Always dislike him at first, but by the end of the movie, oh man, that John Ashton character, he's all right.
Marvin.
Well, when they have that interrogation scene with Helene in the next sort of main scene, obviously Ed Harris is playing the bad cop, John Ashton is playing the good cop.
He does a pretty good cop.
He does a great job. There's one of that part where he really sort of sits down with her and is like, "Listen, we don't care about this. We don't care about the drugs. We just want to find your little girl." Like, I really believe him, even if obviously he's fucking lying, but we believe him in that moment. He does a really good job. He's really, really good in that scene.
Nick, the character's name is Nick.
Yes.
The John Ashton character?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nick Poole.
And so here we discover, right, that Helene has stolen money from a drug dealer. And so they automatically start.
Well, we learn here not only has she stolen money, but she's been working as a mule for him for quite a while with this other guy, Ray Lekansky. What a great
Ray
name.
Lekansky.
Times.
Yeah. I would say, you're right. This is the one time where it is a little bit funny because she's like, "Jesus, B, it was only a couple of times." And I'm like, a couple of times? Being a drug mule? She has no patience for B, right? At any moment, even B, she's like, I was just doing a lot of coke at the bar, and B's like, "Coke?" And he's like, "Shut up, B." And I love that moment. Titus Welliver has that good moment, right, too, where he's like, you don't talk to my wife like that in my house, and you don't say anything racially insensitive or whatever he says to him. I'm like, whoa. I was like, based Lionel over here.
He's a great character, actually. And again, it's something that works really well in this movie. Like, the book is more complex. Affleck said, if I did everything in the book, it would have been a 7-hour movie.
Mm-hmm.
But like, there's actually some pretty interesting.
Nick's taking care of it on the podcast, making sure we get a 7-hour podcast, making sure Ben Affleck gets taken care of all these years later. What a guy, Nick Rocco Scalia. What a guy.
Doing it for Dennis Lehane, really, more than I am Ben Affleck. But, I like that the supporting characters kind of get to have some moments here. And he's got that great bit earlier on. I thought you were going to mention this about, doing coke and like, is it a lot? Oh, no, not that much. 2-3 times a week. And he's like, that's a lot.
Yeah. What would be, well, I don't know. What's a lot? A couple of times a week? I guess it's a lot. Yeah, no, that's a great moment between them. And obviously I've seen the movie before, but like I said, I've forgotten most of it. Titus Welliver shows up. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Titus Welliver's in this little part. And in my mind, I should have been like, Now, obviously, you don't cast Tyus Welliver in this part unless you're bringing him back for something bigger, right? But so we find out that she stole the money, that she's been drug muling, and that her and her boyfriend Ray have the money hidden somewhere. And so immediately, Patrick and the police are like, okay, maybe Cheese, who is a drug dealer, the name is Cheese, has the kid. So let's go find Ray, find the money, and figure out what we're gonna do, right? They go to find Ray, and Ray is dead, right? And I love that when Ray Ryan's like, I'm not staying in the fucking car. And then she walks in and she's like throws up or whatever.
That's good. No, she doesn't, right? She walks in, she takes a look at his dead body, and it's not that, like, she doesn't scream, she reacts, but it's like, it's a very sort of naturalistic, she's so good in this. I mean,
she's so good. Well, I was
we've said that already, but I love that moment where she just kind of walks in, it's a wide shot, she takes a look at this bloody scene in front of her, she's like, I can't deal with this shit, and just walks right out.
Yeah. I will say, in the lead up to that scene, the F slur is flying fast and furious when they're in that car ride to Ray's house.
The guy she dated in high school.
And my thought about it was, of course that's unfortunate, but it's also how 2007 Bostonians would talk.
And I'm sure still talk very often.
Yes,
I'm not saying I was like, this shouldn't be in the movie. It was just like, I was like taken aback a little bit because I had forgotten, and you can even see it right on the Michelle Monaghan character's face, because obviously Patrick is playing it up to try to, like, get in good graces with her, to try to get her comfortable with him. So you can tell, like, but Michelle Monaghan's face, like, this is not how you talk. Like, what are you doing right now? You can tell.
So funny the way she shit talks him in the scene, though. Like, it's such a somber movie and such a somber scene. They're going to find. Well, I think they have a sense that he's probably not going to be in good shape when they get there. But yeah, this, like, the way she kind of just like joshes him about high school in that moment. Again, in the grand scheme of things, could you probably cut that? Yeah, and have a pretty powerful movie anyway. But this movie has, like, some color to it that I really like, and that's definitely it too.
I mean, those kind of scenes, the kind of scenes like them in the car are the kind of scenes that make the movie to me. It's like the big scenes, of course, are the showstoppers and are powerful and are the things you're going to remember, right? But little scenes like this are the things that make great movies great, right? That's what you need, scenes like this where it's just people talking for character and just for tone and for vibe. To me, I don't think cutting this out would have helped the movie. In fact, I think it would have hurt the movie, because you learn more about Amy Ryan's character in Helene in the scene. You learn more about Patrick. You learn a little bit more about what's Michelle Monaghan's character's name?
Angie.
You learn a little more about Angie, and it gives us, like I was saying before, the movie lacks generally is a little bit of, like, emotional buffer before we get back into the really serious stuff. Because what this scene also does is shows Helene at her most sort of crass about the whole situation. Like, she seems like unaffected, really not that upset. And then there's a line just a couple of moments later, like kind of after they find the money, where it starts to sink in with her about what's actually happening. The Cheese might have her daughter. Her daughter might be in real trouble. And she says that thing about, like, the last thing she said to me was she was hungry. You think he fed her, right? You don't think she's still hungry. That little moment, like, slayed me, basically, because it's just one of those little things. That's what gets
you the Oscar nomination,
right?
Sure.
Yeah. Where I'm like, this is what. Forget about the big moments that were. And also, I would say this in my mind. I guess more on the Melissa Leo side of things, the performance was much bigger to me in my memory than it actually is in the movie. The performance in the movie is much more understated than I had remembered it being. Like, I was expecting big, huge emotional outburst scenes, right? Like, and the fact that so many of, like, the truly hard-hitting emotional moments for her are so small is what I think is most impressive about the performance.
Agreed. There's one with another character later in the movie, though, that is it's a silent moment. We'll get to it when we talk about the ending, and it just breaks me. Like, I'm thinking about it right now. I'm starting to well up a little bit. Like, it is. Yeah, it's, again, great actors and a director that knows how to handle them.
Yeah. So, Nick, how emotional on the scale of Tron Legacy, Olivia Wilde, Garrett Hedlund talking on a space bridge?
I'll defend that thing to the death. That seems great. No, this one definitely gets me. This is one of those. I lost it a little bit this time seeing. I don't remember crying the first few times I saw it, and I don't know, maybe because I'm a dad now, and I don't think I'd seen it before I'd had a kid. It hit a little bit harder.
I mean, this movie I think hits differently being a parent, but I did one a few days earlier, The Babadook. As
Oh,
a,
yeah.
as a
Oh,
parent,
yeah.
Like, yes!
it's a different fucking movie.
Oh yeah, for sure. Uh-huh. Like these little shits.
All right, so where are we? We're at their the national treasure their way to cheese has your daughter. Like,
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
this is the way, right?
Yeah, they find the money. Well, I think finding Ray dead obviously is like, okay, Cheese killed him. He knows the money is somewhere, so he knows the money is missing. He knows you were with Ray.
Yep.
Right. So, ergo,
They
we
don't
think
think to
Cheese has
dig
your
up the
daughter.
backyard, by the way. Like it's just right there in the backyard.
Yeah, I know.
It's
I'm like,
probably what I
Cheese,
would have done. Yeah.
come on, Cheese. Obviously, Cheese doesn't know, right, that he has the money. This is all a big like clue setup or whatever that has been happening, like a little breadcrumb trail. But the next scene is like, okay,
Mr. Director Hire does his clue setups.
Yes. We're going to go talk to Cheese. Basically, we're going to go make a deal with Cheese to get Amanda back. And Angie and Patrick convince them, like, we know this place, we know him. Let us go in and talk. If you go in there, he's going to clam up. He's not going to talk to you, and nothing's going to get done. And then they go in and talk to him. This scene was so fucking tense. I was like on the edge of my seat the entire time. I think it's probably, the most tense I felt in the entire movie was in this scene, because the actor who plays Cheese does such a good job at, once again, much like we're talking about Amy Ryan, not really playing it big. He's playing it very small for the most part. And for the most part, is pretty even keel through almost the entire scene, right? Most of the scene, the power dynamic is Patrick has the power and Cheese does not, because he feels like, because you feel like Patrick feels, we've got something on him, right? We've got what he wants. We know what he has. And we are in the driver's seat here in this.
And I think what's wonderful about the performance is you can tell that they know each other and that he actually likes Patrick.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he doesn't want to hurt him. He doesn't want him to be there. And he wants to get him through this. Like, he's almost, kind of subtly saying to him, like, just let this go and leave me the fuck alone. And I don't want this to happen. I don't want to have to be the gangster that I am. Mm-hmm. And I think that actually makes it more tense, that like it would be a reluctant thing, but like if Patrick pushes him too far, he's just not going to have a choice. And I think that thread sort of runs through the scene a really interesting way too. Yeah, I agree. It never really gets much more tense than this, because all of the other scenes that, well, there's one when we get to the house with the Tretts, I think that's pretty wild also.
It's a wild scene for sure, but it's so much more on its face wild than this scene. I think is why this scene
that's true.
Gets to me more, because that scene, it's like these weird ass looking people in this dingy looking disgusting house or whatever, this is like, each guy sitting on a couch sort of like talking to these two people. And
you've got his buddy Chris Mullen, the sort of agitator. Yeah, which is great. Like, it's this other counterpoint to the scene as well, where, he's going to say stupid shit and he's going to threaten Patrick, and like he could blow the whole thing up too. That character's in like 2 scenes, but we know a lot about Chris Mullen also. So
just speaking to the reality of what's happening, what Patrick doesn't know, right, is Cheese has got no idea what's actually going on here. Right? Like, Cheese has no idea. He doesn't actually know the money got stolen from him. He doesn't actually know anything about where the girl is, right? But Chris Mullen, right? That's his name?
Yeah, Chris Mullen.
I think of the basketball player.
I think of Chris R in The Room, but
is in on it though, because the cops have kind of enlisted him to sort of like be like their guy on the inside to sort of like push this plan forward, and then he ends up getting killed later on because he's a witness, right? So I really like that, because when you know that later and you look back at the scene, you can really tell that Cheese is like, what the fuck are you talking about? Why are you? He really is like, he's not playing some cool gangster thing, right? He's like, no, I really don't understand. Why are you here?
He's pretty cool when he drops the title, though.
It is cool. I forgot that he said the title too. I was like,
Oh no, I think it's in the
oh.
trailer. Yeah, it's great. I'm not a big title drop guy, but in this movie, this
Yeah.
movie does everything right for me. So
really good. And Casey Affleck is great in that scene. Again, really good in his whole career, right? Is really good at this thing where he shouldn't be intimidating. He shouldn't be powerful, but somehow he ends up feeling that way through his performance. Whether it's being loud and big or being small. It's just like when he's in Oppenheimer and he shows up and you're like, this is the scariest fucking guy I've ever seen in my life.
it's that little bit of drawl in his voice that he has. Yeah. It's like, like he's just kind of thinking things over and he might just like beat the shit out of you or something.
Yeah. I mean, another joke about Interstellar, right, is how the hell did his voice get higher from the time he was a kid to the kid? He's Timothy Chalamet. He's like, hey, Dad, I don't want you to go or whatever. And then he goes, hey, Dad, I got a farm and Grandpa's sick.
That's not bad.
Thank you. So this scene is great. Basically, though, in context of what we know in the movie right now is he blows it, right? Affleck blows it. Patrick blows it. And they leave and they're kind of like, you fucked this up, right? And it basically feels like at that moment it's over, right? Like, it's okay, we don't know what we're going to do. If this kid dies, it's on you, basically, is where we're at. And then we get the next setup, which is, right, the next thing that basically happens is the call to the station, right? The call to the police station when they're like, oh, we got a call. And like the captain wants to see you because Cheese called and he wants to set up a meeting, but the call was recorded and transcribed or whatever. And now we're shit out of luck in general. So they set up this
meeting with Doyle, Nick,
yeah,
Remy.
Yes. And they set up this idea that
Remy
is
a great
called,
scene too. Like they're getting chewed out by the captain, which is a cliche, a cop movie cliche, but like it's kind of because they did something right and it was actually a good thing that it happened. And but now it sort of forces their hand where they got to set up this meeting, and it's a really interesting scene because it kind of works on two levels that way.
Yeah. So you think that the plan would have been if these two never get involved, right? Is the plan generally just we investigate, we never find anything, the case gets closed and we go on? Or do they is the plan to kill Cheese and blame and lay it on him? And that all gets thrown up because they wouldn't have enlisted Chris Mullen if that hadn't been the case, right?
And Doyle needs, so we're talking openly about how this ends.
Whatever. The movie is 20 years old.
I know. Doyle has to retire in disgrace in order to fuck off to the country.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. He can't just be in Boston with the missing girl.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I think the original plan has got to be that they've because Lionel tells Remy about the money, and that's what kicks the whole thing in motion.
Well, no, he doesn't tell him about the money, right? He doesn't know about the money. Really, it's him talking to his buddy, right? That gets him sniffing down the path of the drug thing. And then at that point, when he comes to Remy and Nick, when Patrick and Remy and Nick, he's like, they realize, oh shit, this guy is now too far down the road.
Yeah.
Right. For us to just brush him off. We need to now pursue this. So they do that interrogation. They get her. They obviously want to know where the money is, right? They want the money, so they get her to tell them where the money is. And I think their original plan would be at this point when they go to meet Cheese, go in there. The two cops go in there, and then they do kind of what they were going to do what they do at the quarry, which is, oh, things got out of hand. We had to shoot Cheese. We found Amanda's bunny and her blanket or whatever, her doll and her blanket in the back, and some blood or something, and we can't find her anywhere or whatever. And then the same thing happens, right? But instead, those two go in there. We lead to the next scene. We set up this idea. They're going to meet at a quarry. They're going to do a handoff with the money. The captain's really sticking his neck out because this is an illegal activity and they've involved him against his will. And they're going to do it. And there's a moment, right, where Patrick goes is it Patrick or is it Angie who goes no, we shouldn't do it like this. This is a mistake. And then that's when Doyle is like, are you going to tell me you do this to me? And then I'm going to tell you all about how my kid died until you feel so bad. You just let me do whatever the hell I want. Just what it feels like in that conversation. That's the one thing. Again, I'll say this. Great movie. That scene. And now when we look back on it, I guess it makes sense because he's really trying to like push through these objections so their plan can go through. But at the moment in the movie, I'm like, all right, I feel like we're putting it on a little thick here with the story, you know, about his child, right? Because it comes almost out of nowhere. You know, he's like I think this tactical idea is wrong, and he's like, my child was murdered. How dare you question my tactical ability?
That's his raison d'etre, right? Like it's introduced right in the beginning of the movie, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
He's this police captain, like he created this unit about missing children, and he's
I know his kid is dead.
No, I know, but like
the opportunity to use it on them.
Yeah, to use it. He's just like she's like, what if
I feel like he does that all the time, right?
What
like,
if you shut the hell up? Do you have a dead kid, Angie?
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Like I get the sense that Doyle does that with everyone, and that's how he's so good at his job. Is like, I'm just gonna use the dead kid card, and like you're gonna do what I tell you,
Doyle.
So yeah, retroactively, I think it does make sense. It definitely makes sense once you know the true end of the movie, right? It definitely makes sense. But he's just like, you got kids? He's like, no. He's like, well, then you'll never know what it's like when they're dead. And I'm like, all right, man.
Because guess what I do?
Yeah, I do. My kid's dead.
And you know what? I might like to have another one. I shouldn't have said that.
No. Maybe I'll steal one. A new one for myself.
You think I want to take a child? I will not.
See,
take
that's
a
what
child.
I'm talking about. A lesser movie, a lesser director would have him like say something like that.
You know, Johnny.
Johnny director for hire.
Johnny director for hire.
Drop a real good
Johnny
hint right in
director
that scene.
hire.
Johnny director hire.
I worked with Johnny. He was.
And so they decided this quarry meetup. They're gonna do a swap, right? They're going to give the money to Cheese. He'll give him the girl, and everything will be fine, right?
I don't think so. Just the way this scene is laid out, right? Like, all right, we're gonna go on top of this cliff, and you go over on that cliff. It's this huge wide shot. It's like they're never gonna find each other. Like, this is a really terrible situation here. But
so the situation is supposed to be
they go along with it.
Is Cheese and the girl come to Patrick and Angie, right? That's what it's supposed to be, and then make the swap, and then the police are there basically just for backup. They create this like situation where there's an ambush. They run over, and the whole idea is like, in the fracas, in the fray, Amanda ran into the quarry and drowned. That is how basically the scene ends up.
Yeah,
right?
People start shooting. We see the muzzle flashes in the woods, and then something splashes in the water. And what we see floating, which we initially think is her, is her doll Mirabelle, which was set up earlier in the movie.
Yeah, and then Angie jumps into the water, and they use that as sort of like this cut point to Angie gets basically blacks out when she wakes up. Basically, Affleck has to tell her the girl is dead or she's missing. The divers can't find her.
The divers are in there because the quarry's like 100 feet deep or something.
Yeah. And then that's basically the end of like what I was saying before is like kind of like this first half of the movie that it's this almost like self-contained story in a lot of ways. And it sort of breaks Angie and Patrick's relationship because it's exactly what Angie was afraid that was going to happen. Was the kid was going to end up dead, and it was going to basically scar them both. And both of them are dealing with it in kind of their own ways. But basically they've kind of given up, right? It's over at this point. Until this drug dealer that Patrick had gone to see earlier in the movie about Amanda shows up because he said like, oh, if I ever find out this pedophile guy is around again, or this couple is around again, I'll let you know. And
right. Well, we didn't mention that, right? So one of the things when they first meet with Ed Harris and John Ashton's characters, there is a suspect, even though he's not really connected to the case, but he's a known child molester. He's just gotten out of prison. He's shacked up with this like gross old drug dealing or something couple. They're criminals too, and something. They have this weird little familial relationship going on. And like they kind of just float that guy out as a person of interest, but they never really enter his orbit until this scene, and then he kind of comes screaming back into the narrative.
Yeah, and it's also in the time since the death,
Corwin
quote unquote, of Amanda is, Doyle is retired. in
2 months
disgrace.
later. Yeah.
And
then another kid disappears.
another kid is missing, and his St. Christopher medal that he always worn is also missing. And that's sort of like this identifying physical object to find him, much like the doll was for Amanda, right? He goes to this house. He goes like, basically he's going to take him there. And at this point, Casey Affleck's character, Patrick, he's not really going there because he thinks he's going to solve a mystery, right? He just is like, I need to do something because I failed this other kid and I just want to get revenge on something. I want to do something to get this like empty feeling out of me, right? So he goes with him. They go inside and we meet this couple who's like, they're like base heads. They're like, they basically will crawl on the ground to snort
Breaking
coke.
Bad's Mark Margolis
Yeah.
playing a role that probably got him that job.
And then the pedophile guy comes like out of the room, who looks so much like
Paul Scheer.
also looks like that meme that's like from The Onion that's like devastating, the worst person made a good point or whatever, like that picture. Oh, you should look it up because he looks a lot like that guy. Comes out of his room and Rose is there. So they sort of like they leave, and he calls the cops, calls Remy, and he calls Nick. They show up, and this was the moment when I'm watching the movie last night where I'm like, oh right, isn't like Ed Harris in on this or something? Like I'm in my head. Because they're like, we're not waiting for the SWAT team, we're going in. And things go bad. John Ashton's character gets shot. So Casey goes in, Patrick goes in, and there's this really harrowing scene where he finds that the kid who was missing dead in the bathtub of this child molester guy, and he comes out and he just shoots him in the head, basically.
Well, the guy pleads for his life.
He does, yeah.
Yeah, he shoots him in the back of the head and kind of
Yeah.
has him in a position where he could easily, restrain him or something like that. And he's like, nope. And
Yeah.
Right.
it's exactly what most people would do, but it is it's a pretty intense moment. in the movie.
Yeah.
We have a movie where our single solitary protagonist murders someone and then deals with the fallout of it while also solving the mystery of the movie.
Yeah.
There are two very important scenes that follow this, one with Angie and one with Remy.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
It's not glossed over. He doesn't do it and then we move on.
No, it sort of
it's
becomes
really important. Yeah.
It sort of becomes the central idea of the second half of the movie, right? It's interesting that it is the most extreme version of this kind of quandary, right? Is like, what's the right thing to do in this moment, right? Is letting this guy, technically the lawful thing to do is to let this guy, the cops come, arrest this guy, and take him away. But that's happened before and he's hurt another kid, right? And so is the right thing to do to kill him, just to get rid of him, or is it to do it? One of them is right, one of them is wrong, possibly, maybe both of them are right in their own ways. That's kind of what the whole central idea of the rest of the movie becomes. And I want to say that when he finds the kid, though, he sees the kid, and we get like the only, I think, really well done and effective, like the top of the kid's head, basically. And then the camera cuts to black.
Yep.
And immediately comes back like a couple of frames later, and Patrick throws up on the floor. And it's just such a well done, not showing you enough to let you know how horrible it is, but not showing you too much where it's gratuitous and it's something that like it's being exploitative, like we mentioned at the very beginning, like kind of this like sadness porn sort of idea. What I really like about this second part of the movie, and really like about the fallout of this, is how the people around him are like, kind of, good job.
Attaboy.
Like even, Angie is like, I'm proud of you. And at that moment he goes like, you're proud of me. And and the fact that he's just like, but this was an absolute wrong that I did. Like, you're not supposed to kill anyone. Like, murder's wrong. Like, full stop.
Even if it's the worst person in the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that is one of the themes in this movie, right? It's like,
And
how
he's
close...
pissing Remy off with being like, but I shouldn't have done it. Yeah, you should.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should have done it.
It's like when you get that close to like the ultimate darkness, right? What does that do to you? It's almost like a cosmic horror kind of idea that this movie has like running through it, right? Like, there are things in the world that are that fucked up and that evil. And if you encounter them even for a second, like, it changes you, and it can't not change you. And I think like Casey Affleck is so good at getting that across throughout the rest of the movie. And it's set up, again, we talked about in the beginning where Angie says, like, I don't want to find a dead kid. he not only does that, but then has this moment in his own life where it's
Oh, right.
Yeah, absolutely. But what I
But it
think is
doesn't matter
fascinating.
because they're a split protagonist. So when he experiences, she will also,
I think she does. I mean, I think they are that close, right? Like this affects her as well. And I think it sets up what happens at the end of the movie with her, which is important. They're the
So
same
I will say
person.
this. I'm not teasing you about this. I will say I think she's obviously a very important supporting character, but I don't think she's the protagonist. She may be the protagonist, split protagonist of the book. I don't think in this movie she's a split protagonist. I think it is very clearly Patrick's movie. Like the story in the script is written around Patrick, his point of view. Yes, he consults with Angie. Yes, she's very important to the story, but there are many a scene that are just driven by Patrick and his wants. There aren't really any scenes that's like, and what's Angie up to in this scenario? And what is she doing outside of Patrick to solve or figure out this mystery? None of those scenes exist. So that's why I would say I push back against your split protagonist theory on the two of them. The movie is very much his movie, and yeah, she's an important part of his life and his story, but she's not the central figure of the movie, right? She doesn't have to make the final decision, whatever it might be, like, all of this stuff. So that's why I push back. I don't know how it is in the book, and I can't speak to that because I haven't read the book, or any of the books.
I hadn't read the book before I'd seen this movie the first time. So I did see the movie first, wrote about the movie first. I do think it's a very, very different story without her. And I do think,
yes.
it's like her perspective is important enough to this where it's integral to the entire thing.
It is, but I mean, it's also that you can also say anything about Remy's character. There's a lot of characters, so the movie would be very different without them. I don't think it makes it a split protagonist story because, like I said, give me one scene where she is the driver of the scene, or where she's driving the story or driving the actions or driving the decisions that are being made.
I feel like all of his decisions indirectly are because of her. But again, we can
I
quibble
told you,
over
Brian.
it, but we don't have to. Can agree to disagree.
We can agree to disagree. So, and I love that how he figures it out is this next scene, which is him and Remy drinking together. And it's just one thing that Remy says, right? And you as the viewer as well are like,
wait, what?
Wait a second.
Yeah.
Because very clearly you said you didn't know this guy at all. And then he's like, oh, he's my informant 15 years ago or whatever. And you're like,
Ray Lakansky. Everybody knows Ray Lakansky.
Yeah. It's obviously a very memorable name. We heard the reason they say it like 15 times in those couple of scenes because they want you to remember it now. Yeah. And you're kind of like, oh, is that like just an oversight? Part of I think as the viewer. And I love this idea that just Patrick's brain is just always going about this stuff and sort of this like, always looking for somebody trying to get one over on him. Like, South Boston, like working class vibe that he's got to him very much plays out here, right? Where he's got his antenna up still for it and he hears it. And I love that when he comes home, that's the first thing he talks about, right? Is like,
he lied to me.
He lied to me. And I love that. Obviously that line is great. I think it was in the trailer, you don't know who he's talking about or whatever, but he says the thing about like,
not big enough to
yeah. I can't think of one reason why he'd lie to me. I can't remember. I'm gonna botch the line right now, but such a great line.
Let's get it.
Yeah, you want to get it up, Brian? But I just love that because it's such a good peek, and again, a very noir thing into his brain and the exact thought string in his brain of why does this thing stand out to me? Yeah. Because there's no reason for him to lie to me about knowing Ray Lakansky. There's just no reason. Because even if he knew him, he wouldn't necessarily think to talk to him about this or know what was going on with him 15 years later. So it's all sort of like, it has to be something huge because there's no other reason.
He lied to me. Now I can't think of one reason big enough for him to lie about that's small enough not to matter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a great line.
That's very good. I mean, it's very good line. It's very Raymond Chandler. It's very Philip Marlowe. But again, it's probably like word for word from the book.
Right. I'm sure it is. It's a great line though. It really sells the whole situation and really orients you into the stakes of now what's going on. Some big shit is happening, right?
And then you get a terrific funeral scene where the two of them encounter each other like for the first time after this, which is
And like
Again,
just walks
it's
up next to him.
it's that cliched scene that it's the detective movie thing, right?
Mhm.
The cop funeral. We've seen
Yeah.
1,000
Oh,
of
yeah.
those in movies, but this one, there's this other layer of it going on. It's actually much more important than
Yeah.
mourning the loss of poor Nick, who I like a lot.
Yeah.
They got those arrangements happen very fast.
Yeah.
'Cause I believe it is the next day.
Yeah,
It is the next
yeah,
day.
that 21 gun salute. They called him right up that morning.
Yeah. But I love that moment where he goes like, "Don't fuck with me today," or whatever. And you
Yeah,
know,
like,
he's
we could still be friends. Like, let this go. I
Yeah,
like
can you just
you. I
forget about
really
what we
respect you. I really
Yeah.
like you. Like, we could be cool, but
can we just forget about what happened last night? And he goes, "What if I don't?" or whatever. And then that's all he has to say, really.
Yeah.
You know, and we know kind of off. And then we do get like this very odd scene for this movie, which is it's a scene not Patrick's not in, and would never be able to know what was actually going on. That scene of Titus Welliver sitting there in his living room, sort of like just staring away, you know. And that we get that the zip into like part of the phone call between him and Ed Harris's character. We don't get the whole thing. We don't know it's not the whole thing at the time, right? And then we get. I really think that the cheese scene and this scene in the bar are probably my two favorite scenes in the movie. When Titus Welliver's character Lionel orders all the drinks, he's been you know a sober
for 23 years.
23 years or whatever it is.
23 years is not nothing.
Yeah, it's not nothing. He gets
Love that
3
line,
shots
too.
of Cuddy and a tall boy or whatever. And then just kind of lays out, right, what quote unquote really happened, right? And kind of lays it all in front of him. They set it was a setup.
We forgot Michael K. Williams.
Oh, we didn't forget about Michael K. Williams. That's right. We forgot
Shows
about
up out
Michael
of
K. Williams.
nowhere.
Yeah, when he
Yeah,
shows up in the police station the first time, I was like, Michael K. Williams.
For like a second, I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I saw him in the credits. Is that all we're going to see of him in this movie?"
Yeah,
and then,
yeah, yeah.
of course, you don't hire Michael K. Williams and not have a Michael
Yeah.
K. Williams scene.
And we
he's
get that
great.
scene where that happens after the funeral scene, where he kind of
It's right
pulls him
after, yeah,
aside
right.
and he goes like, "We need to talk." And basically Michael K. Williams basically kind of lays it out like Remy, all of this stuff. Like, I've heard some stuff is going on, and again, kind of floats this idea though, as well as like, sometimes the bad thing is the right thing to do if it's in the right situation, right? He's also giving him this and kind of selling him like, look, man, I'm not going to lie to you, but I don't think you want to go down this road, right? You don't want to go here.
And it's not just he's protecting a fellow cop.
No, it's not.
You don't get the sense that like he's just friends with him, so I'm gonna, the blue wall of silence or whatever. Like there is another reason, which there is.
No, and you kind of get the sense that he actually like
Doesn't like Remy.
He doesn't like Remy, but he likes Patrick. Like he likes him. He doesn't want him to get hurt. He doesn't want his family to get hurt. Whatever's going on, he's kind of it's bigger than you think it is. So please do, you got to be really sure you're gonna go for it. Obviously,
But you're paying for my steak.
He's paying for his steak.
And I'm going to walk out without saying goodbye because that's what you do in the goddamn
Yeah.
movies.
Thanks for the steak, and then just gets up and walks out.
Can you imagine do that to your friend?
Patrick, obviously, we know Patrick's not going to give it up, right? He's not. He's gonna pursue it to the full extent, and he does. And now we get this Lionel scene, and he lays it out right that the kidnapping was a setup. That he and Remy took the girl basically to get her away, from Helene, get the money, blah, 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 whatever, and hold her for ransom, essentially. Hold her for ransom. And during this conversation, someone who's definitely not Ed Harris in a mask walks in. And
the mask should have had hair, right?
Yeah.
Like the bald, like Three Stooges mask. Like, that's like the worst choice. Get a Michael Myers mask or something.
This is Michael Myers.
He's not even disguising his voice either when he's doing it. It's obviously Ed Harris's voice.
It's an Ed Harris mask, I think.
It basically is an Ed Harris mask. But this scene, I want to say this. I want to go. The Titus Welliver is so good in this scene where he's breaking down what happened. And the fact that there's 2 layers to it, that he's actually not telling the whole truth, but it seems so real, is also really great. And that moment where Ed Harris sticks the gun in his face, and you have that double meaning line where he's like, please, I told them that we held him for ransom. Like, you think he's saying it because you're like, shooting me is not going to matter at this point. I already told them. And they start yelling out like, Remy's kidnapped the girl.
So this is my moment. This is the moment that I think is Affleck's
Okay.
give him all the awards for the rest of time.
Oh, it's great. Yeah.
I've never seen a dying declaration in a movie like this
Mhm.
where I really believed. So all right. So Remy's got the gun in Lionel's face. Well,
Mhm.
and again, the ruse is so dumb. Like, what did you say when he didn't say anything? So the
Yeah.
witness, oh yeah, oh. The weird pig man just blew his head off because he said something. Yeah. So
Titus Welliver, Lionel in that moment too. He's like, I didn't say anything. Like,
I know.
you don't get what's going on here.
Yeah.
the
We all know it's Ed Harris, Lionel. When are you going to
no,
figure
the
it
Tim
out?
Robbins. It's the I didn't do shit. I didn't say fucking shit. So Patrick sees this happening and he decides to use this moment to out Remy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And he knows it's going to cost him his life. He
Mhm.
knows it. He screams out, Amanda McCready was taken by Remy Broussard.
Mhm.
Amanda McCready, and fuck. And he's about to get his head blown off
Mhm.
and he knows it. And I've never seen anything like that.
Mhm.
And I believe it so much. And it takes me, like I said earlier, physically, I get constricted watching it.
Mhm.
It's so visceral.
Yeah.
And then I don't believe for a second that, I believe the character is like 60 years old. He's got shot twice in the chest, and then he would have that much of a lead on our younger.
Yeah. He goes up a whole building. He's on a roof of a
He's
building.
on the
at
roof of a building.
And I really like. I mean, that scene is really good, right, between them, where you get this moment, right, where when he's dying, your real feeling is like all of this talk with him in that scene where he's drunk and he's talking about, how much, kids are special and they forgive us and all this kind of stuff. Kind of where you're like, honey, he's just like so full of shit. You get that moment like before right, what's going on. You're like, just an angry guy who's just full of shit, right? That's
Sure.
sort of in that moment because you're like, he did something bad. He obviously this was gonna blow up in their faces. It's all about money. All of this stuff, right? It's just
Right. And being that way about kids is a way for him to justify to himself, all the
Yeah,
brutal shit that
exactly.
he does as a cop. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'll use this as my shield or whatever,
Mhm.
but it's really just all about money and
Yeah.
me venting out my anger however I want to and justifying it in some way. And then
Oh, I love this rooftop scene so much.
it's a really great scene. Do you want to talk more about aspects of it that what you like?
No, I mean, I think we
Mhm.
covered it really well, but it's nice, particularly the wide shot where we get that nice sort of golden hour Boston skyline behind
Yeah.
them. And it's, it's this great moment of respect between these two characters. Like we've come to really dislike, like, I feel like Remy is another one of those characters throughout this movie, much more so Lionel does it a little bit too. But like we're kind of with him or against him. They have that great scene earlier on in the diner where they talk about, who's more from Boston, like this guy from down south, but I've been living here since I was 3 years old or whatever. Like there's those kind of moments. And we kind of
Mhm.
go back and forth on this character throughout the entire movie. And in this scene where he's dying and he's just caused all this chaos and all this violence, I think we really love this character in this moment. Like, we don't want to see Remy go out like this. And up till, there's a lot of points in the movie where he didn't care that much about Remy. Like we kind of thought he might be in on it and wanted him to pay for it.
Well, now I thought that maybe I had gotten Remy to do this for us, but
Well, in this moment, I
Right,
did
like-
want
like
him.
is-
I did want him to die though. In this moment, like I had no sympathy for him in this moment because not thinking about what's going to happen at the end of the movie, thinking about what's led up to this moment, right? Thinking about it.
he's just trying to cover his ass.
That's what it feels like, right?
But the desperation gets me, I think. It's not so much that he made a good choice. It's that, it's the noir thing. You made the worst choice and there's only one way out of it. And that's
Yeah.
where the tension is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's tense scene, and I think it's a really good scene, for sure. And then the next scene is this interrogation scene with these two other cops, right? And they're kind of going into it on him, like, a cop is dead. What's going on? He's like, I told you. He's like, did anybody contradict me? What's wrong with it? He breaks down the whole thing, and that's when he gets the next nugget, right? Which is the transcript thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, was it a 911 call? And they're like, no. He's like, no, it was a call to the station. We don't record calls to the station. We don't transcribe them. Did you hear a recording?
The fuck you don't.
Yeah. That's the moment where he goes like, oh, sorry, for some reason when a cop tells me something, I trust him. Like that the whole like the Casey Affleck face. And then he realizes, right, what's going on. And he goes like, I must have been mistaken or whatever. And then, so I want to ask you before.
That's a cut to the drive to the country, right?
Yeah, it's just kind of drive. There's like a little bit of like no, we get the beautiful mind, like putting it all together thing when he's talking to Freeman, right? Or we hear here like when they're driving the whole like, he brought Remy up from blah, 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 or whatever.
I think there is a little bit of a flashback thing.
Okay.
It might be just an audio thing, though.
Yeah, an audio thing where they're kind of, he's kind of putting together how Remy and Doyle are connected. In this moment, do you think he thinks Amanda is alive or that she's dead and just Doyle is complicit in it? And that's why he's going up there.
Oh, I think he knows she's alive.
I think he suspects, but he like, because the moment happens where she comes out and there's a bit of relief, because if he was going there, be like, I fucking know this.
Yeah,
there'd be a bit more indignation, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But he's playing a hunch. He's playing a gamble on whether she's alive or dead. He knows for sure that Doyle's dirty.
Yes, I think he thinks she's dead. I think he at this moment thinks basically what he was told was true,
and it just went shitty.
Except for them leaving Doyle's involvement out. Because in this moment, Angie is not playing the scene like she plays the end, right? Where she's like, I saw her, I know she's alive, don't do this, right? She does say, if you're going to do something like this, you got to be sure, right? Yes. That's what she says to him. But I think she just means like, if you're going to go accuse someone like this of doing something like this, you better have the facts straight, because
that's really interesting. You guys really thought, I mean, like, where do we ever get a sense that Doyle would be capable of doing something like that?
We don't. I'm not saying he meant to do it, but I'm saying like, my feeling is like something went wrong in the plan and she ended up dying, because when she comes out of that door, his reaction isn't like, exactly as I suspected.
Right.
Coming out the door, And then after that, and the reason I really think this, and I really think this is what the movie is trying to convey, is because right as we do get another set of those like flashback things where he's kind of putting it together, right? This idea of like the Remy saying, I love kids, what Lionel says to him in the bar when he's got the shotgun in his face. I told him that whatever, that we held her for ransom, whatever. I did it already. I did it. And then we see the part of the Ed Harris call that sort of like brings in the Doyle part and kind of goes over it a little bit. So all of that stuff tells me that this is him putting together the final pieces of the puzzle. In this moment when he sees Amanda, right? Because also his indignation and his the way he reacts to Doyle is a little bit different once he sees her than right before. I think that
interesting.
That's my guess anyway. Is he was coming to make sure he was right, that he was part of it. He had a strong sense that he was part of it, but he needed to make sure.
So then it is something of a shock to him when he sees her.
Yeah, I think so. So. And then we get the full realization of the situation, right? That they took Amanda because Helene was such a bad mom.
Sorry, I don't want to let that go, actually, because that is really interesting. That's a whole different read of it.
It changes everything about it, because I'm sorry, Nick, go ahead.
No, okay. Like, my only thought was, like, if looking at the story the way it is, right? If Doyle had taken her, like, to keep her as part of his family, right? Like, you get this girl out of there, you send them off to a family, like, have someone adopt her, give her to somebody else where you can't make the connection, right? It's kind of stupid for him to keep her
for
himself.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So
yes.
I guess my only I think I always had a sense she was alive, but I didn't really have a sense that she would be there, because I felt like Doyle would have not made that very obvious choice to sort of have her, everyone knows that you lost your daughter. You talk about it every time you go on television. You're on TV all the time. So everybody knows you as that guy who has that daughter-shaped hole in his leg. So the thing to do would be to like pass her along somewhere. And, I think that's
filled.
Like my take the first time I saw this movie was like, they're never going to find her because he sent her somewhere and he's never going to tell where she is. Right. So I think that's what the shock is, that, like, I think it's more just Patrick thinking, how stupid could you be to keep her?
Because I'm thinking that the whole ride up there, but before you brought this up, Bobby, because I never considered that he didn't know. And now that I am, right, if it is, it's the hunch he's playing and see, well, she's like, maybe she'll be alive. And if she is, that great. But like, once he has that confirmation, he's making those decisions in real time about what he's going to do.
Yeah, exactly.
As opposed to having 3 hours to drive up to the country and thinking about, okay, here's how this is going to play out. I just have to execute the plan. He if he gets new information, that's acting on instinct. That's letting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because I think like also, again, stylistically, I don't think you show like the putting together all this stuff, like them throwing the rock in the water and all that stuff in that moment. If he's figured it out beforehand, that's
right.
First thing. Second thing, the conversation with Michelle Moynihan that happens at the end after this scene happens before this scene. If he already knows she's alive and someone else has her, even if it's not him, there's still like, I think the conversation would have already happened, right?
Right.
I'm not saying he doesn't think of it. It might be it's a possibility in his head, right, that she's still alive, but I don't think
she doesn't go with him.
No, she's like, I saw her down the lane.
No, I'm saying if he goes, she's alive and she's there, when I get there, I'm going to turn him in. She's like, they break up then.
Yeah,
before
exactly.
they get in the car.
That's why I think he doesn't know. That's why
that's a really good read.
Why he doesn't know. And then, basically Morgan Freeman gives him the more down to earth, I'm just trying to make the world a better place villain speech, basically, right? Like there's so much
more
wrong in the world.
More sympathetic than usual.
Yeah, I'm definitely more sympathetic than usual, for sure. Absolutely. And there is obviously the part of the movie's whole point is you can kind of see his point, right? Obviously, this woman is terrible or is a bad mom, and the girl is most likely headed to a bad adulthood because of this the situation she's growing up in, right? And then it becomes this sort of central thing, much like the shooting the pedophile in the head idea, right? Of, okay, is letting her go with Doyle because she'll unequivocally have a better life growing up with him, even though it's illegal and morally wrong in a lot of ways and morally right in some other ways. Is that the thing we do, or do we give her back to her mother because it's not your choice to make about this kid, right? That you can't just take a kid because you think you're doing it for the right reasons. And of course, Casey Affleck says this to him, right, in his speech to him. I think they're both great in this scene, right, together.
I think from this scene, like everything leading up to this, I really love also, but it's like perfect scene to close this movie out. This is, it's one of my favorite twists in all of movies. This blew me away the first time I saw it. And again, I hadn't read the novel beforehand, so I was catching it cold, from this movie. But like, I love that this movie ends up, it's a shocking climax, but not because, it's not this very dark movie just going, finally taking that final step into the darkness. It's not an inevitability. It's all about a choice. It's this whole thing is really driven by character choices. And they are, whatever your read of like the drive up to the house is, we know that the scene is going to hinge on some kind of choice that Patrick is making. And it's not just like he's going to arrive and see something like, oh, I was too late or something like that. Is always the twist at the end of these, right? That's Chinatown. If I had only caught up with this a little faster, if I was only a better detective. And here it really has nothing to do with being a detective at all. It's like, yeah, man, you figured it out. But now here's like, you have all the power now. What are you going to do with it? And I love that. And I love that the Morgan Freeman character is so sympathetic. I'll mention it now. So when they actually do make the decision, there's just this one shot where he's sitting on the porch in a rocker and the little girl comes up and sits on his lap. And no words, not even much of an expression on Morgan Freeman's face, but the fucking sadness of that couple of seconds of screen time is just overpowering. Brian, you were saying kind of having a physical reaction to that scene in the bar, and I agree with you there. I feel the same way about this and the last scene with Patrick, which we'll get to.
And there's that shot of Monahan just with her heart broken.
Yeah.
And you know what is about to happen, but you hope that it isn't. And then you see the blue lights and you know that the call was already made and it's over.
So I guess a good question about this, right, is do you think he made, I guess, the right choice? Did he make the choice you would have made? Or do you think he did the wrong thing?
I'm Team Angie. I don't know about you guys.
Brian?
I'm Team Angie.
Oh, I'm Team Patrick 100% in this moment. Really, truly. And I think it asks a very interesting question, right? Which is like, and I agree with Patrick when he says it to Angie. He goes, you know, why? Because she's going to have birthdays and she's going to have whatever. Like, that's not a reason why you can take her away from her mother. Like, there are things you can do if you think it's wrong to get her away from her mother. But like, this is not the way. And like, yeah, maybe she would have had a better life. Maybe. Because who knows what happens to they're not like they're 25 years old, right? They're older people, right? They're going to be living on the run because, like you said, this girl was on the news everywhere, right? This police detective was on the news everywhere. How is she going to live? How is she going to go to school?
Yeah, how far up in the country are they?
Where are they going?
That drive in the woods, yeah.
When she has
How
to go
long
start
actually
school, where is she going? So that's part of it, right? And that when he says that thing to him, when he says that if this adult woman comes to me and goes like, you found me and you let like these people keep me, even though you knew it wasn't where I belonged.
And my counter to that would be that in 2 years, when Helene leaves her in the car and she dies in the car, that
you're assuming that'll happen. But that's what I'm saying.
You're asking about.
Yeah.
I'm saying that while I understand why Patrick says that he can live with the one thing, he can't live with the adult woman asking, why did you take me? Why did you not let me go back to my home? That would be hard to deal with. But knowing that there's a chance that she negligently dies on Helene's watch after you know what she's capable of would be, I wouldn't do it.
Right. But I guess the question is, why do you get to make that choice?
I don't.
That's what I'm saying. And that's what I think the interesting thing about this movie is, right?
Well, I think it's also the crime of opportunity. Like, so many things have already happened that there's the experiment called trolley problem, right? Like so many things have already happened. They're in motion. Like, all you gotta do is hit a lever or don't, right?
Yes, except even in this real world scenario, the consequences are both, you know, are not set in stone. There's not if she gives Amanda back to Helene, Amanda's not 100% going to die.
No.
And I would say it's very actually small chance that she dies. And if she goes with Doyle, yeah, she probably has a great life, but maybe she doesn't have a great life, you know? And I think
eventually there's a confrontation, right? Like, probably they can't lie to her forever.
And I understand why Patrick makes the choice he makes.
Yeah.
But that's what I love about this movie, right? Like, they are two valid positions, and it's, you know, it's like I'm Team Angie, but I'm like 51% in that direction, 49% the other way. It's not
just like America.
Just like
again, this episode comes out like December 19th or January 5th.
We'll reveal how the sausage is made. What I was just thinking, I started to laugh for a second there. It was because think about, you know, it's 1995. We're renting Mallrats on VHS. Could you imagine having this sort of weighty philosophical discussion about a
Shannon
movie, the manager of Fashionable Mail? Because I just didn't see it coming.
Yeah, I mean, I completely, although I don't think obviously it's a hard decision. There wasn't a moment where I was like, I'm going to let the kid stay with Morgan Freeman. Like, there was not a moment, you know, for me. And I totally got where Patrick was coming from. And what I really appreciate too is that Patrick doesn't just do this and walk away, right? He's not saying like, I'm putting you back and.
No, because he knows he's throwing away the best thing in his life, which is Angie. The only
even above
good thing
that,
in his life.
But what I'm saying is,
because she makes it very clear to him.
Yes,
before.
No, but I'm
like,
even just talking
if
about
you make that choice, like, we're fucking done.
Right. I'm not even talking about that. I'm just saying also, like, but the follow up when he goes to Helene's house and he sits with Amanda.
Well, we got to talk about that scene too.
I know, but I'm
'Cause-
saying, but what I'm just saying is, Casey, Patrick is not going, okay, I made the right choice. And now what happens will happen. Like, like I put her back where she's supposed to be. And now it's up to like the gods what happens. No, he's at the house. He babysits her. Like, he's taking a personal investment in what's happening.
Well,
Right?
Helene goes out with a guy that she met, because she was
Yeah.
on the news and he sent her letters and stuff like that. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess we're there already. Like the things
these three
break down
scenes are a soup, right?
between him and Angie. Sure.
Yeah.
And we get definitively, honestly, I mean, it's played really interestingly in the movie. I think there's one more book in the series I haven't read, but they get back together, not as a couple in the follow-up to Gone Baby Gone, but like they work together again, but the relationship is off. Like we're never going to be like together again. I know there's one more, so maybe there's a happy ending for them. But I think at the end of this movie, it's very definitively like they are done. It's like she's sticking to her guns the same way he stuck to his. My read of that final scene, which is just heart-wrenching in every way, it's a beautiful moment. This little camera movement. He sits down on the couch with Amanda, and the camera sort of circles around. And we get the TV in the foreground, and just the two of them sitting a few feet away from each other. This guy that she barely knows, but kind of, I think, has some sense that she has a connection with, because he was instrumental in getting her back and all that stuff. My read of that moment, it's kind of an ambiguous ending, but my read is he feels he made the wrong choice.
I mean, I think the whole time he has like this sense of, maybe I'm making the wrong choice. I think even when he makes the choice, I think he has that sense, right?
Well, agreed, but I feel like it's
Yeah.
solidified. It crystallizes for him in that moment on the couch
because
when he realizes.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. Finish, Nick. Finish.
Well,
Nick.
it's just the realization that like I can't do this my entire life, and clearly her mother is not going to be there for her, and I doomed this child to this.
Well, I think it's the realization that it's the last line that Helene doesn't even know the name of her favorite doll.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, like,
right. I think you're right. I think you're both right about that. Absolutely. But I also think I take a little bit and I think this tends on your feeling, right, on his decision, right? I think you can, because it's ambiguous, you can read it in a couple of ways. For me, there's also that little moment where she's playing with the doll, right? And she looks happy, right? She's smiling, like when she's kind of playing with the doll, right? So it's not like I think the movie's trying to go like, we're not going to make this like, she's just this despondent, miserable little girl who.
No, that's too easy.
But that's what I'm saying. That's what I appreciate about it. What I appreciate it,
me too. I think we have to sort of connect the dots if we want, and it's ambiguous. It's not as definitive as maybe I said it was, but my read of it definitely is that he realizes in that moment, or has been sort of trying to hold off this realization that he made the wrong choice. But again, I love that this movie, whatever you feel about it, that this ends with these choices and these sort of very, very weighty things. And, like it's so easy to end a movie like this just in violence and darkness. And it's not that. So it's almost worse than that, because in some sense, this is worse than the guilt of killing somebody. This is worse than, doing something you can never take back, because this person's still alive. This little girl is still existent in the world, and the consequences of this are going to play out for years and years and years, and we're never going to know. There's like this uncertainty about it. And again, it's a great story, and we can't obviously credit that to Ben Affleck, but the way this scene is handled is so nice and so perfect, and just really ties this movie together. I mean, it's, as I was saying before, this is like a really, really elevated genre piece, and it's so good on those terms. That definitely was my favorite movie of that year.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing I will say about I think the scene with Angie is great, and I think Monahan is really good in this movie. And maybe it's just me. I don't know, because obviously you have a big investment in their relationship. I really wasn't like, I'm really torn up that they're gonna separate, because it just wasn't a thing that I was invested in the movie. So I invested in it because Patrick feels despondent about it, but I'm much more locked into just whatever Patrick is having to deal with in the fallout, right? Than the actual function of the relationship, I guess. But in that moment too, the last moment, I also have the sense like, Patrick while he may think he made the wrong choice, also has a little bit of like, okay, but like I can help it not be this disaster that they think it was going to be, right? If I'm here, if I'm helping, like I need to help it, you know? So,
So I don't think we ever really talked about the relationship. For me, because you
before
were
we
asking
could
me
go on,
before,
we have to lose Brian because Brian has to be up at 5:30 in the morning. So Brian's gonna peace out.
I am. But this was a lot of fun, and I'm hoping that you spend another 45 minutes talking about some split protagonists, and I'll tune into that. I'll just skip to this moment. But no,
do you want to add anything to that discussion that we can cut in later?
Yeah, that when Officer Taggart and Officer Jackson Pollock both died, then they were once one, but then now they are a zero. It's a great movie, and I think that like, The Town is such a popcorn movie, and The Town has such rewatchability. It's one of those TNT movies, like, oh, it's on, great, But I think this is Affleck's best movie as a director. I have not seen Live by Night. That's the one I haven't. Oh, I haven't seen Air either. So
yeah,
I saw someone's letterbox review of Air was.
It's fine.
No, basically, it's fine. No, actually, like totally solid. I will watch this movie for the rest of my life while I'm cleaning my house. Basically, is basically what
I got that vibe from it. Yeah,
which I thought was really good. I mean, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how we feel about The Town when we watch it next time. I'm very excited to watch The Town again.
Me too.
In
I've
my
only seen it
mind,
once.
in my memory, that's his best movie. But maybe I'll rediscover a different thought as we go through.
I mean, I fell in love with this one right away and fell pretty hard for it. So
yeah.
There was never. I don't think he was ever going to outdo this one for me, but I like The Town a lot too. The Pete Postlethwaite scenes, those are the ones that come up on TV. And it's like, I got to watch that.
All right, Brian, you get out of here. You got to be up early to vote tomorrow morning. So, I'll talk to you later.
All right. Good night, guys.
Good night, Brian.
Later. Thanks, Brian.
All right. So you're going to talk about the relationship.
Yeah, I just really, really briefly, I just wanted to mention, I think one of the things this film does really, really, really well is it just peppers in these little scenes where you get a sense of kind of what their life is like. Whether it's them in the apartment together in the kitchen, just hanging out in their sweatpants, talking about the case, like the idea that it's a personal relationship and a professional relationship, and they have this shared history. I mean, that is a lot to shorthand in a movie like this. Like it's the fourth novel in a series, and I knew nothing about any of the rest of them, and I didn't read them until long after I saw this. But like, I felt like even the first time I saw this, I got this really good sense of who these two characters were, what their professional relationship is like. Like they're always kind of helping each other through their grief or through their tough moments. Like we see them kind of in these very intense situations. A lot of times, the Angie character is kind of reacting to stuff that Patrick is doing, which is really interesting. And, thinking to herself like, oh, I wish he would shut the fuck up right now. Like if you just stop right here, she is his conscience. As I said, she's his better half. That's a great relationship. I feel that way about my wife as well. And so I think it does a really good job. They're both really, really good actors. I love her and everything I've seen her in. She Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Brian mentioned earlier, another one of my favorite movies because I'm just way, way obsessed with this noir stuff.
Mission Impossible 3.
Yeah. So a great movie. I really enjoyed like the way that relationship is portrayed. And to me, the ending does resonate for me. Like when she kind of breaks it off with him in the end, it all adds up to this moment where it's like, I feel like he can't exist without her. And that is because it's a subtle thread throughout the movie. And it's because the story of this is so propulsive, like it doesn't ever really slow down to give us these long emotional scenes just about the two of them and who they are. But we kind of get it in the action of everything else that they're doing as they're investigating this crime. And I really love that. There's no other movie I can think of that does that. It's like the serious version of a moonlighting sort of relationship, which is, it's a tough thing to pull off because it could very easily tip over into, romantic comedy, banter, sort of, joking around sort of stuff. And it never does. Like they really, the respect they have for each other, I think is really carefully articulated in this. And, I think that's why in those moments where she's just like, kind of shaking her head at the decisions he's making, she's like, I know you're smarter than this, right? I know you're better than this. And still you can't help yourself. I love that.
Yeah. I guess for me, you kind of hit the nail on the head. Why I think it doesn't feel that way for me is she is very passive throughout a lot of the movie. And I think for me, that negates or makes it hard for me to create a connection with her as a character and to really see their relationship as equal, I guess, in the way that you're seeing it. I think for me, she feels often like the person you said who sits there and like kind of like watches him do his thing and then will react in some way or have a or ask a question here and there, or you know, in those big scenes where there's big interrogations going on, or those scenes that are really tense like we talked about that she's a part of, she often is a silent part of those scenes and is more involved when they're kind of making decisions or talking like after or before scenes like that. And I feel like it sidelines her a little bit just because, you know, in a book, right? In a book, you can have sort of this internal dialogue or this sort of narration that references her a lot and talks about how important she is being there and what they're giving to each other in a scene. And in a movie, it's a little harder because it's so focused on just, you know, he's talking to this guy and getting answers and getting loud and getting whatever. And she just happens to kind of be like, no, let's just go or whatever, you know, like that.
But that's who he is and that's who she is, right? I mean, she doesn't.
But that doesn't make it for good, and it doesn't make it for engaging scenes for me, or
But she's not
give me a
left
face
out
for
of
their
those scenes
relationship.
either. Like she is shown, you know, it's him doing all the talking because he is
Yeah,
the talker. But
she's
she
there.
does, like, you know, she gets the reaction shots. No, I mean they are meaningful in the scene. She's not just there as like set dressing. I don't think.
I mean, for me, sometimes it feels that way. I guess I should say that's the
Okay.
thing for me. Sometimes it feels that way for me because she's so passive in most of those scenes. Like she's not making decisions in the moments, and that's her role, I guess, in their
But she
partnership.
is reacting, and I feel like she's the one who's kind of thinking things through. Like, I don't know, she's a more contemplative character, and I find that really interesting. Like, I want to know what she's thinking in those scenes because I know how Patrick's going to be. He's the Boston guy, you know.
Yeah, but we
he's
never
gonna-
figure out what she's thinking in those scenes, though. That's the thing for
I
me.
think I get a pretty good read on her, but
That's the thing for me. It's like,
okay.
it's like, again, this is why I push back on the split protagonist thing, is that she might react to those scenes and in those moments, in those high intensity moments, or in those questioning scenes and the interrogation scenes, whatever it might be. But I don't really feel like, and I could be missing something, I could be wrong, that her reactions in most of those scenes divert or change the way that the scene goes beyond if she was there or not there, you know? And that's the part for me where I feel like she's passive in a lot of those scenes, is that nothing she's reacting to or doing is changing what Patrick is doing. You know, he's doing what he's doing. And yes, we're getting her take on what he's doing. But until that last scene,
But
yes,
it leads her to making that big decision she does at the end.
yeah, but here's the thing. That's just a moral question. And I think she's very good in that scene. And I think that scene is good. Right. And I that no arguments there. I think that scene, she's a very active participant in and has a very, makes a choice that changes the trajectory of his character, you know, but it comes way at the very end. Right. And, you know, earlier on, I'll say the one time she takes sort of the reins, right, is when they first go to Helene. They're setting up this idea of like Patrick's gonna have to convince her, right, to take the job, and in the end, she's the one who decides to take the job, basically over him. You know, like she's kind of like, we're doing it or whatever. You know, so that's the one time where she makes the choice. But then I feel like the whole hour and a half in between until we get to the end, there isn't much for her to do, especially, I mean, the second half of the movie, she's in it much less than I think the first half of the movie, right? Once we get to that second part of the movie, it's much more Patrick focused on his own, sort of doing his like, sort of like solo, almost vigilante thing.
Yeah, I agree with that.
You know, so I think that's the reason why. Maybe it's because the second half is so light on her, except kind of coming and going like, are you sure you want to do this? Like that's most of the time what she says, which fair question in real life to ask this person in these situations. Just from the character, I think I wanted a little bit more from her. I think she's a fantastic actress. I think she kind of, this is around the time really where she's not in that much more really after this kind of era. She kind of goes away for the most part. I mean, she goes to TV, she does bit parts, she's still around. Don't get me wrong, but her as like leading lady, this is right. I feel like kind of near the end of that era.
It's a career I would have liked to have seen a lot more. I think she's great.
I thought she was always really interesting, and Had a different energy than a lot of actresses of her same
And I just like the
age.
choices. I mean, she
Yeah.
fit into my genre really nicely, and I would have liked to have seen a lot more of her there.
Yeah, totally. I'm trying to see, actually. I hadn't thought about this. Oh, she's in Maxine this year.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I didn't
still need
know
to
that
see
either.
Maxine.
She works pretty consistently, but let's see. 2006, 2007, she got the 2005, 2007 run, right, of Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Gone Baby Gone, and Mission Impossible 3. And then she kind of goes into like, Arena Comedy World, The Heartbreak Kid, Maid of Honor. She does Eagle Eye with
Shia LaBeouf.
Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah.
And then she works. She's in Somewhere, the Sofia Coppola movie, Due Date, Source Code.
I love Source Code.
And then that's 2011. And then after 2011, she really, she kind of disappears into like TV and like movies you never heard of world. That's where she kind of goes. She's in Pixels in 2015, Patriots Day in 2016, which I haven't seen Patriots Day.
Back to Boston though, so that's good.
Yeah. She does 36 episodes of a show called The Path in 2016.
I liked that show. Yeah, I forgot she was on that with Aaron Paul.
Yeah, and then she starts doing, she shows up in Mission Impossible movies, like little cameo things, like here and there.
Say she should have gotten a series, but The Path, I don't know if anybody watched it. I
it ran for 36 episodes.
Yeah,
so
it was Hulu. I think Hulu had like 2 original shows when they started. That was one.
You know what she's in this year? She's in that Bad Monkey show, the Vince Vaughn detective in Florida.
Yeah, which I've been watching, and I've already forgotten that she was. So.
I heard you didn't like it. I heard good things about it, but I haven't.
No, I liked it. I think I gave up after 2-3 episodes, not because I didn't like it, just because I ran out of time or something.
Gotcha. Understood. So
I'll watch anything with Vince Vaughn in it.
Yeah, that's Gone Baby Gone. Really strong first movie, obviously from Affleck. Next week, like we were saying, we get into what I remember being my favorite of his movies, which is The Town. But I have not seen it probably since around 2010 when it came out. But I do remember that Jeremy Renner gives one hell of a performance in it. That's one of the things I really remember from it.
That was the Renaissance.
It was the Renner. Well, we call it the Renaissance, or it was like the Renner Begins. Jeremy Renner Begins.
I mean, it was both, I guess, because
that's his era. That's all the movies he's getting after Hurt Locker, right?
Yeah, it was the Hurt Locker era.
Yeah, exactly, the Hurt Locker era. So we'll be talking about that next week, and then obviously we've got Argo, Live by Night, and Air, and then we'll be finishing up with 2 bonuses, one on The Last Duel and one on Good Will Hunting. So those should be fun to do, and that'll bring us past the end of the year. And then next year, we'll kick it off with a new one. And we're also going to do something next year where we give you guys a chance to vote on the director you want us to cover. So I think that'll be fun and a way to get everybody involved and maybe cover some movies that we hadn't really just considered covering because we weren't going to do directors like these directors. So, because we're going to vote on like kind of big time directors, one big time director a year we're going to cover, and we'll let you vote on it. So, that's what we'll do. We'll put those names on that list. All the names you've heard of, we'll put those names on that list and let everybody vote on what they want us to talk about. So I think that'll be fun. You can subscribe to the podcast on any of your podcasting feeds. You can go to intrepidfilmographers.com and you can subscribe to the Substack there. It's free. You get updates whenever we post a podcast or a video or an article. Please do that. Please rate and review us on your podcast platform of choice. It really, really helps us get found. And leave feedback for us too. Send us an email, leave comments on the Substack. And we want to hear what you guys think of the show, what you like, what you don't like, so we can make the show better. But until next time, that's going to do it for the Intrepid Filmographers. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Bobby. And thank you, Brian.
Oh, and thank you, Brian, as well. You're welcome, guys. And thank you.
That's good, Brian.
Thank you to everybody who's been listening. Until next time, be good to one another. Later.